The scene starts in a school within the Orange Empire, in the Lanster fiefdom. The teacher of a class of small children tells them they will be learning about mages that day. She instructs them to meditate and focus, asking if anyone is able to do so. Among the preschool students is a young boy named Lin, who wonders if it is true. After school, Lin sits on a rock in the garden, reflecting that it has been 8 years of studying in preschool. Some of his peers have become mages and gained independence, while Lin still cannot meditate. Yet, he knows that to uncover the truth of that year, he needs to become a sage-level mage. Suddenly, a net covers him as he raises his hand. A group of boys arrives, apologizing and explaining that they accidentally caught him while practicing magic. One boy asks why Lin didn't use a shield to block it. Another boy questions what they mean, pointing out that Lin hasn't even graduated from preschool yet, so how could he possibly use magic? First, one boy asks why Lin's magic is so powerful if he is still a beginner. Another boy says it's because Lin isn't an orphan adopted by the Lord. As they leave, one comments that a street urchin with no name is unworthy of being the Lord's heir. Lin becomes frustrated and wonders if they truly know how to pierce someone's heart with words. Carl, a knight, approaches the three boys in anger, drawing his sword and demanding to know what they are babbling about. Lin tells Carl to put down his sword, and the boys run away. Carl insists that Lin should let him punish the boys severely. Lin climbs down from the rock and tells Carl that he shouldn't use such methods. He points out that the sword was granted to Carl by the king, and it is not meant to be used against commoners. Carl bows and apologizes, promising not to do anything foolish like that again. Lin says it's fine and suggests they drop the subject, then asks Carl why he came there. Carl agreed and said he forgot to tell Lin that the master had received a letter from Oliver, so Lin had to go back and take a look. Lin wonders if Oliver, the one who helped hide his name, might have discovered something important. He recalls that Oliver was the benefactor who sheltered him when his father had an accident, always trying to help Lin perceive magic. Knowing that Oliver must have found something significant, Lin decides to inform Blaine, who asks him to hurry back for study. Lin thinks about how Blaine is actually his mother's brother. Blaine tells him that the message is from Oliver and suggests they listen together. Lin agrees, thinking that although he should call Blaine uncle, they must maintain their adopted father-son facade to protect Lin's identity. Blaine shows a small bird statue and tells Lin to read the letter. The statue speaks, greeting Blaine, and explains that it stumbled upon a peculiar magic book that might help Lin awaken his magic. Then a book appears, and Lin wonders if it is made of animal bone, finding the matter peculiar. He reflects on how many years he has tried and failed to awaken his magic and wonders if he might succeed this time. Blaine tells him that if he feels too tired, he doesn't have to force himself. Not everyone can be a mage, let alone a sage-level mage. He assures Lin that he could always live as himself and reminds him that it was Zoe who left Lin, so why should he bear such a heavy burden and force himself to become a mage? Lin thanks Blaine for his kind words but explains that his father's betrayal wasn't simple. He recalls how, in the past, if Lin came home 5 minutes late, his father would become anxious and search the entire city for him. Now, his father is stranded in the dragon's territory, and Lin doesn't know if he is alive. As a son, Lin cannot ignore this. At night, Lin lay on his bed, holding the book, and thought about how he knew Uncle Blaine was trying to help him. However, as long as there was a chance to find his father, he wouldn't give up. He remembered how his father rarely came home. Once, when he was a kid, his father brought him new toys. Whenever his father came, they used to play whatever Lin wanted, making everyone happy. His mother would ask Zoe if he was leaving again. Zoe would agree and reassure her, saying that if everything went well, this would be his last expedition. The next time he returned, he wouldn't leave his family again and would stay to live happily with them. Lin remembered that his father never came back, and not only that, but his mother also went missing. If he wanted to reconcile his broken family, he knew he had to take action. He wondered if the magic book would really help him awaken his magic. The method of learning recorded inside was totally different from orthodox magic. He had already failed countless times, so what was one more attempt? He thought there was no harm in trying. He tried to concentrate and use his magic, but he failed again. Determined, he focused once more and saw numerous blue magic balls around him. He wondered if he could now perceive magic. Suddenly, he felt something different and questioned why there were so many magic balls. It felt like his body was going to explode, and he vomited blood, fearing he might die. He didn't want to die because if he did, he wouldn't be able to look for his family. He screamed loudly. After a while, when he opened his eyes, he found himself in a black area and wondered why the magic power had suddenly disappeared and everything had turned back so quickly. The lights were off. He thought he should first get out and see what had happened. He found a red egg and wondered what it was. Suddenly, a screen appeared in front of him, greeting him. Lin was shocked and wondered what it was. The screen showed him that it was his butler and had been waiting for him for 10 years. It welcomed Lin to the sacred fief that belonged to him, known as the Dragon Ranch. Lin suddenly found himself transferred to a small space in the middle of the ocean with very little room to sit, and the egg was still with him. He wondered if there was a dragon nearby. The screen displayed a message explaining that once the dragon egg in front of Lin hatched, there would indeed be a dragon. Lin looked at the egg and wondered if it was truly a dragon egg. The butler confirmed that it was Lin's first dragon, and that he would not be able to return to his home world until he successfully raised the dragon and completed the basic feeding tasks. Lin became angry, realizing he couldn't go back until the dragon was raised. He worried that as soon as the egg hatched, he would be eaten alive. Then, he noticed the shell of the egg starting to break. The butler gave him a friendly reminder. If he didn't drop blood onto the dragon egg before the shell fully broke, the dragon would indeed eat him after hatching. Shocked, Lin wondered what was going on. Quickly, he cut his hand to get his blood and let it drip onto the egg, saying he must form a bond with this kind of monster that could potentially destroy the world. As he dropped the blood, he noticed it was imprinting, and then the shell broke. Lin wondered if he had succeeded. He found a small, cute dragon sitting in front of him. Lin wondered if this was the most terrifying creature in the world. A dragon. He thought it was just a little whelp, so what was there to be afraid of? Then he removed the shell from the heavy dragon to set it free. The dragon became angry and asked him how he dared to touch it, then kicked him in the face. This confirmed to Lin that it was indeed a dragon, and it seemed he could understand the dragon's language. A screen appeared, announcing that he had completed the test and congratulating him on obtaining the dragon. His experience increased by 5, and he received 50 gold coins. Additionally, he was rewarded with 1,000 gold coins as a beginner. Gold could be used to buy feed, construct fields, and expand territory, with system gold and real gold being equivalent and exchangeable 1 for 1. Lin wondered if he could use the gold as real money. He received another test to construct a fire-type dragon nest and would be rewarded again upon completion. Lin wondered about the fire-type dragon nest and began constructing it for the little whelp. As he held the dragon, it became angry and used fire to attack him, asking who would cherish a home made by Lin. While working on the screen, Lin replied that the dragon wouldn't appreciate it. The dragon told him not to act as if it were just a toy. Lin discovered that he could create a beginner's dragon nest for 100 gold, which wasn't too expensive. The dragon insisted he leave, questioning how he could want to use a home built by Lin, claiming it didn't want to live there. Suddenly, Lin found that his area had expanded, and he was congratulated for completing a task. He received 5 experience points and 50 gold coins. The dragon nest would allow for daily growth of 1 and could hold a maximum of 500 gold coins per day. The dragon seemed happy to see its new nest. As it settled in, Lin approached and reminded the dragon that it had said it didn't want a home made by him. He decided to name the dragon 𝐸𝐬. He found that 𝐸𝐬 was a simple creature and soon fell asleep. After 𝐸𝐬 drifted off, Lin followed the system's instructions and completed a few more basic tasks. With just a few presses, he realized how comfortable it was to be a rancher. He also grew dragon skill fruits there, which were one of the dragon's favorite foods. They had a growth rate increase of 10 after feeding, with an extrusion period of 1 day. Lin wondered if he had finished raising the dragon, and if he could leave now. The screen prompted him to use the exit command to leave the ranch. Once he did, he found himself back in his bedroom. When he opened his eyes, he saw Blaine, Carl, and a boy looking at him with concern. The boy was even crying. Lin asked why they were staring at him like that. Carl and the boy pointed towards the ceiling. When Lin looked up, he noticed it was broken. The two of them cheered, thinking that Lin had caused the damage. Lin wondered if he had actually blown off the ceiling and if this was something they should celebrate. The boy agreed, saying that Lin had finally released it. Blaine explained that Lin had unleashed a very high level of magical energy. Lin was surprised and realized he could now perceive magical power. He wondered if this was thanks to the magic book Oliver had given him, but questioned why he had entered such a strange space while awakening his magic. As Carl and the boy celebrated with beer, Lin asked Carl to take a look at the book. He encouraged Carl to follow the instructions inside to cultivate and then tell him if he felt any differences. Lin wondered whether Carl or Blaine had sensed anything strong after reading the book. Perhaps he was the only one able to enter that mysterious space. Every time he tried to explain it to them, his words came out differently, and the boy even asked if he was being bewitched. Lin recalled that since blowing off the roof the previous day, he had been coughing up blood whenever he meditated. He realized that it was the strange system limiting him from absorbing magical power. He tried to avoid returning to the ranch, but that annoying being calling itself his butler had barged into his real life. Lin noticed that the food for the fire dragon was insufficient, causing 𝐸𝐬's health to decrease by 10. He ignored that issue, but then another notification appeared, assuring him he didn't need to worry about basic needs. However, 𝐸𝐬 was famished, and Lin felt he was not living up to the standards of a qualified rancher. As they sat down to eat, Lin thought that aside from him, no one else seemed to be aware of 𝐸𝐬's existence. Blaine asked him why he wasn't eating. Lin replied that suddenly he didn't feel hungry. Blaine asked how he could eat so little, reminding him that practicing magic took a toll on the body. Lin thanked him for the advice. Blaine continued that he had already informed Oliver about Lin awakening his magic, and perhaps Oliver would come to recruit him for the Holy Iris Magic Academy. Lin wondered if the Holy Iris Academy was indeed the best magic academy in the Orange Empire, where Oliver was the associate dean. His father had been one of Oliver's students, and Sir had mentioned that Lin's father was one of the most talented students there. Now, Lin had the chance to study there as well. Suddenly, warnings flooded his mind. He realized that if 𝐸𝐬's health dropped below 10 and he didn't return quickly to feed it, the dragon could die, and as a result, Lin would be transformed into a defenseless egg to compensate for the ranch's loss. He was shocked to learn such rules existed. After that, he rushed back to feed 𝐸𝐬. As he did, he noted the dragon's enormous appetite and worried that it might drain his energy next. He thought that eating well and sleeping properly would prevent any abnormalities. After feeding 𝐸𝐬, he noticed that the dragon's level had increased. Lin gently patted 𝐸𝐬's head, but the dragon asked him not to do that, insisting it was growing. Lin realized he was becoming more like a qualified rancher. However, he also felt he was transforming into a tiger in sheep's clothing. The butler reminded him not to forget that it was thanks to them that Lin could finally perceive magical power. Lin wondered if it was truly the butler's influence that allowed him to use magic. The butler agreed, stating that he could provide Lin with even more. Curious, Lin asked what that meant. He noticed that 𝐸𝐬 had reached level 1 and that he had unlocked the magic training room. The butler suggested that he try the first lesson inside the training room. Lin found himself on a meditation balance board and worried that he would fall the moment he lost his concentration. How was he supposed to focus and meditate? The screen showed that 5 seconds had passed, and his meditation had failed. As a consequence, the hunter released the hammer of retribution. A hammer came down and struck him. Suddenly, roots sprouted from the board, pulling Lin back up to stand on it. The butler informed Lin that unless he successfully meditated, he would never be able to leave the balance board. If he failed to meditate for even 5 seconds, the hammer of retribution would be released. Lin questioned whether the butler was training him or trying to kill him. Once again, the hammer struck him multiple times, and the ring pipe gradually increased in height. After many trials, Lin finally completed his training, raising his magic level to 1. He realized that he had spent 7 days there, training for what felt like an eternity. Feeling confident, he activated his magic perception. The magic circle appeared, and as he unleashed a fire spell, he noticed it was surprisingly small. Embarrassed, he sighed with relief that no one else was around. However, Jack had witnessed everything. Overcome with emotion, Jack rushed to call Blaine to report that Lin had used fire magic. In a moment of panic, Lin accidentally directed a fire blast toward Jack, urging him to be quiet and not to tell anyone about this embarrassing incident. Jack narrowly dodged the fire, jumping aside. Lin realized that his fire magic had grown slightly stronger, and he recalled the butler's words about how a rancher's proficiency influenced the power of their magic. Curious to experiment further, Lin glanced at Jack, who looked terrified. As he ran away, Jack shouted for Lin to keep his distance, complaining about the heat. Lin reflected on how his peaceful days in the small fief were coming to an end, marked by the sound of Jack's frantic cries. Meanwhile, after receiving Blaine's letter, Oliver promptly sent a response accepting his invitation to the Holy Iris Academy. As Lin prepared to leave for the academy, the entire village gathered to bid him farewell. Finally, he set off in the carriage, ready to become a mage. The journey from the fief to the academy took about a month. During the day, Jack drove Lin to the academy, while at night, Lin returned to the ranch to train and raise the dragon. Unbeknownst to him, the dragon was growing larger. When Lin noticed the dragon's intense gaze, he asked what was on its mind. He checked 𝐸𝐬's stats and was surprised when 𝐸𝐬 used fire to attack him, claiming Lin had given him a new habit. Lin dodged the flame and playfully remarked that 𝐸𝐬 was much more lovable than the butler. Before that, Lin had invited 𝐸𝐬 to experience the outside world. The butler received Lin's orders to transfer both him and 𝐸𝐬 to a designated location. 𝐸𝐬 seemed confused at the time. When Lin asked if he was worried, 𝐸𝐬 confidently replied that he wasn't afraid. Feeling like a man sitting beside a dragon, 𝐸𝐬 wondered why a dragon was outside in the Rift Valley. As 𝐸𝐬 opened his eyes, he found himself perched on a rock with Lin, marveling at the vastness of the place, which was far grander than the shabby surroundings Lin had known. Lin asked 𝐸𝐬 if he would like to fly, and 𝐸𝐬 eagerly agreed. Climbing onto 𝐸𝐬's back, Lin took to the skies, feeling a sense of freedom. After a month of reflection, he had gradually organized his thoughts. Since there was no way to escape the peculiar ranch, he decided to embrace it. He would help train the raid dragons, which would strengthen him in his quest to find his father and restore his family's honor. As they soared through the air, Lin noticed an arrow whizzing past them. Concerned, he looked in the direction it came from and realized there were dragon hunters nearby. They spotted flames in the forest and heard cries for help. The hunters weren't retreating. They were the last hope for the caravan. One of the hunters questioned why they should care about the caravan when their own lives were at stake, suggesting they simply hand over their goods. Lin was taken aback. Was this a robbery? Then, a carriage boy called out to the bandits, claiming he was just passing through. Lin wondered if Jack was nearby. As they approached, he saw Jack and 2 knights hanging from a tree, surrounded by snakes that slithered ominously closer. Jack was in tears, worried that Lin had become so preoccupied with practicing magic that he had lost a considerable amount of weight. Determined to help, Jack decided to hunt for food. However, as he passed a caravan, a group of sinister-looking individuals suddenly emerged from the forest, startling the knights as well. One of the men, a menacing figure, placed a hand on the shoulder of Lucas, the leader of the mansion's Chamber of Commerce. The man demanded that Lucas reveal the location of the hidden goods. Meanwhile, the snakes began to attack the remaining knights, killing them one by one and turning them into dry corpses. Lucas firmly denied the man's request, arguing that the buyer of the goods was powerful and that revealing their location could jeopardize their safety, as the buyers would pressure them until they could sell nothing else. The evil man considered this for a moment and then agreed, suggesting they continue their search. Just then, a snake lunged at Jack, biting him. Filled with regret, Jack thought about how he might not be able to serve Lin for much longer. Suddenly, a fireball soared through the air, striking the snakes and igniting them in flames, freeing Jack from their grasp. The evil man looked around in confusion, unsure of what was happening. Lin arrived just in time to kick the evil man in the face, sending him sprawling to the ground. As the man's head struck the earth, Lin remarked, "You seem quite flexible." The other villains were stunned by the sudden turn of events. Jack's excitement surged upon seeing Lin, but Lin quickly instructed him to step back, sensing that the situation was becoming precarious. One of the henchmen asked the leader if the fire magic had been cast by the boy who had just arrived. The second man added that the boy must be at least a third-rank mage. The leader scoffed, stating that a third-rank mage was enough to make them all piss their pants. He reminded them that their own leader was a third-rank knight, and compared to a mage who needed to chant, a knight's close-range combat prowess was overwhelmingly powerful. With that, he drew his sword, aiming to slash at Lin. Lin swiftly dodged, narrowly avoiding the strike, but he noticed that the rock beside him was sliced cleanly in half by the leader's tremendous force. He realized the leader was right. Mages lacked advantages in melee combat. Moreover, it was 𝐸 who had cast the fire magic. To keep 𝐸's existence a secret, Lin decided to send him back to the ranch. The leader taunted Lin, asking if he only knew how to dodge. As the leader closed in from behind, Lin realized just how fast the man was. Before he could react, the attack landed, sending Lin crashing to the ground. He thought to himself that he couldn't keep dodging forever. Thanks to his training, he had significantly improved his agility and mental strength, so he knew he had to fight back. Lin began chanting a fire spell, but before he could finish, the leader interrupted him with a powerful kick, sending Lin crashing into a tree. The leader then yanked Lin by his hair, smirking as he said, "It's cute how naive you are. In front of a knight of the same rank, a mage has no chance of fighting back." With that, he threw Lin against a rock, causing him to sustain serious injuries. Frustrated, Lin thought to himself that chanting spells was proving to be quite troublesome. Just then, the butler's voice broke through, informing him that it had been detected that the ranchmaster was fighting for the first time, which would trigger the matching of the dragon's magic. Lin was curious about that matching. The butler explained that currently, the ranchmaster had one fire dragon at level 1, and some basic available magic included shield, bite, and claw, with the instant fireball being the primary fire magic. Lin was asked if he wanted to proceed with the import. He pondered the instant fireball, recalling that it was the skill 𝐸 had acquired after consuming the dragon scale fruit. Did this mean he could also use dragon magic? The butler confirmed that dragon magic was inherently 2 ranks higher than that of normal humans, and Lin could access dragon magic as long as it didn't exceed his own level. The more dragons he had, the greater variety of magic he could utilize. Impressed by the butler's knowledge, Lin agreed to proceed with the import. However, the evil leader interrupted him, sneering that Lin shouldn't get distracted. With a swift kick, he sent Lin sprawling again. The man taunted him, asking where the impressive magic he was so proud of had gone. Was he no longer planning to use it? If he didn't, then there was no chance for him at all. With that, the leader raised his sword, preparing to slash at Lin. The evil man asked Lin if he was ready. Lin agreed to the challenge. The evil man wondered if Lin's slim waist would allow him to withstand the attack. Suddenly, Lin unleashed the instant fireball attack on the evil leader. It was such a massive strike that everyone was shocked by the sudden display of magic. Lin rose, and the evil leader questioned whether he truly had the ability to use instant magic. Lin replied that in front of a mage capable of casting spells instantly, did the evil man really think a knight who had lost his sword could fight back? They all seemed frightened of him. The evil leader then asked Lin if he wanted to join them for a meal. Lin responded aggressively, telling them to get lost. After that, Lucas asked Lin if the healing potions were working properly. Lin agreed, and thanked him for healing his wounds. Lucas said they should all be grateful to Lin for helping protect their valuable goods. Lin pondered that they were thanking him for saving the goods. But what about the lives of the people? Were the goods more important to him than human lives? Lucas took Lin to the goods covered by a cloth and said it was the unexpected harvest of their caravan. Although it wasn't as valuable as the other goods, it was definitely something beautiful. As a token of their gratitude, he asked Lin to accept the gift. When he unveiled the cloth, Lin saw that it was a cage containing an elf captured from the elf forest. Lin wondered if this wasn't a species that was almost extinct since the dragon had wreaked havoc around the world. The elves were the closest species to humans. Lucas remarked that no man could resist such a lovely child, urging Lin to accept her. Lin felt a surge of anger. Lucas continued, saying that they were all men, so Lin didn't need to feel embarrassed. He recalled how they had all been starstruck when they first discovered her. She appeared terrified but uninjured. As for the mercenaries around her, they might have died fighting over something as precious as her, and such beauty could fetch at least 1,000,000 gold pieces. This item was not only a gift of appreciation for Lin, but also a sincere invitation to join their Chamber of Commerce. Lin considered the offer. Lucas explained that their chamber had recently encountered a major crisis, and if there were a few more young geniuses like Lin who could wield instant magic, their organization could thrive. Lin touched the cage, thanking Lucas for his kindness, but then he unleashed his power, burning the cage to free the elf. He declared that he could not accept Lucas's view of life as mere merchandise. Lucas asked if Lin understood how costly and precious that elf was to them. In response, Lin cast a fireball at Lucas's leg, causing him to flinch in fear, though a small flame caught his clothing. Lucas began to run, telling Lin to do whatever he wanted. Lin broke the cage to set the elf free and extended his hand to her, saying that she don't have to be afraid. He was there to help her. Lin encouraged her to come out, assuring her that the flames wouldn't hurt her. She stepped forward, thanking him. Lin replied that it was no trouble and then introduced himself, asking for her name. She blushed at this, and Lin thought how easily surprised she seemed, like a timid rabbit. He reassured her that it was perfectly fine if she didn't want to share her name, especially since they likely wouldn't see each other again. He suggested she leave quickly to avoid being captured again. Finally, the elf revealed her name, Nike. She took his hand and asked if telling him her name would mean he wouldn't chase her away. After that, Lin led Nike to his carriage. Outside, Jack was cooking and said he had finally caught some meat for Lin. Inside, Nike eagerly devoured the food, eating so quickly that Lin warned her to slow down, or she might choke. He then asked if she wanted some water. Seeing the glass, Nike grabbed it and drank eagerly. Lin then inquired why she chose to stay with him after gaining her freedom instead of returning to her clan. Nike became emotional and explained that she wouldn't go back because she was too playful and had gotten lost in the forest. Nike explained that when she finally found the path to return home, her clan was already gone, and their houses had been destroyed by humans. She remembered vividly how, during her escape, she saw knights ravaging her clan's homes, proclaiming that the elves had vanished. One knight dismissed her concerns, insisting they should search more thoroughly, claiming they could make a lot of money if they found even one elf. Feeling uneasy, he looked back just as Nike rushed to escape, recalling the clan leader's warning to stay away from humans. As she ran, her foot caught in a trap, causing her to fall and be captured by the knights. She told Lin that she had tried desperately to escape and find her clansmen, but no matter how hard she tried, she always ended up caught. Lin felt anger toward the humans and asked if, as a human himself, she was afraid of him. She shook her head, saying that he was different from those bad men. Blushing slightly, Lin replied that it was nothing much and added that she could follow him for the time being. If they found any clues about her clan, he would help her return. Nike thanked Lin for his kindness. He continued, explaining that he was heading to the academy, where only servants were allowed to stay. If she didn't mind, he suggested she act as his servant. She was taken aback, recalling her grandfather's warning that being a servant was a dangerous job, and she felt uncertain about it. Lin clarified that she was misunderstanding the situation. He assured her he wouldn't make her do anything strange. All she had to do was call him young master and change her outfit accordingly. As for the others, she didn't need to worry about them. After a moment, she agreed and called him young master. Lin felt that everything was now clear, and he began to exit the carriage, noting that it was getting late. He offered her the chance to sleep inside the carriage that night while he would sleep outside with Jack. Once outside, Jack asked why Lin had come out. Lin responded, asking if he wasn't welcome. Jack teased him, mentioning the beautiful lady nearby and questioning whether Lin was really fine with sleeping outside. Lin understood the implication behind Jack's words. The scene shifts 3 days later, where Jack informs Lin that they have finally arrived at the Holy Iris Magic Academy. As Lin steps out of the carriage, he recalls Oliver mentioning that he would share more about the book made from dragon bones once they reached the academy. He wondered if Oliver had already known there would be a dragon involved when he gave him that book. Just then, a butler appeared and announced that Lin had indeed arrived at the Holy Iris Academy. He was instructed to explore the academy in order to obtain clues to unlock the water dragon egg. Lin was shocked to learn that there were other dragons. Butler mentioned that he didn't have to be dismissive. Wouldn't he be much stronger with more dragons? Lin wondered just how much stronger he could become. Butler explained that the rancher had only hatched one dragon egg, so his current abilities were limited. As long as he continued to complete the system tasks and unlocked the 6 types of dragon eggs, water, wind, earth, light, and dark, he would obtain the affinity for all magic attributes. Lin contemplated this and remarked that if he could achieve that, becoming a sage rank mage would be much easier. He realized that while the risks were significant, the potential rewards would be great, making it worthwhile. With determination, he instructed Jack and Nike to wait for him and promised to return in triumph. The two cheered for Lin. As Lin entered the academy, he saw a man flying on a broom who handed a parcel to a girl. Some students were watching a demonstration involving an orc, and one commented that it was a method for creating a magic cloud that could automatically adjust the density of sunlight on dragon-scale grass. Another girl added that this could greatly increase its survivability. Lin wandered through the academy, remarking that it was everything he had expected from a magic institution. As he gazed at the giant hand holding a book, a man approached him and explained that Oliver was away on official business and wouldn't be back for a while. Although Oliver had made an exception for Lin, the academy had its traditions, and Lin would have to follow the man to take the admission test. The scene shifted to the testing area, where many students had gathered. One student asked whether they thought the person who got in through the associate dean had good magical talent. Another guessed that Lin's talent level or magical affinity was likely mid-level, speculating that both could be average. Yet another added that no one really knew. Perhaps Lin would surprise them with high-level abilities. After all, Oliver had chosen him. Just then, Lin arrived, and Fred, the examiner, stated that he would be administering Lin's test and asked if he was ready. Lin agreed, and Fred complimented his self-confidence. He instructed Lin to relax his mind and place his hand on the floating orb. Lin agreed, and as he was about to touch the orb, he asked Butler if the ranch would be detected by it, expressing concern about 𝐸𝐬's existence being revealed. Butler reassured him, saying not to worry. The crystal would only detect his magical talent and had nothing to do with the ranch. Lin commented that this was good. Fred called Lin's name, prompting Lin to apologize and touch the orb, thinking that since his father was a magical genius, his own talent couldn't be too bad. As he made contact, the orb displayed a fiery glow. Fred's thoughts raced. He hoped it wouldn't indicate a supreme level of talent. If that were the case, Lin was truly keeping a low profile. In the past, their academy had never made exceptions to maintain fairness, and Fred had even lodged complaints with Associate Oliver regarding this. He wondered if it was real, recalling that Lin's report indicated he had a low affinity for the fire element. Lin was shocked and asked how that was possible. Butler explained that he hadn't had the chance to finish his earlier explanation. Lin's method of awakening magic was different from others, and his talent was limited by his current magic level. As his magic level increased, so too would his talent. Lin couldn't help but wonder if Butler was joking with him. Others began gossiping about Lin's weak abilities and questioned why Oliver had chosen him. Fred told Lin that since Oliver had made an exception for him, he couldn't say anything further. He handed Lin his belongings and reminded him to report to the academy on time the next day. Lin thanked him, feeling just like a boy who was out of his depth. Suddenly, Lin noticed an important task notification. He discovered that the character detected was Augustine, the president of the Truth Student Union. His task was to defeat Augustine in the Mage Trial Tower and obtain fragments of the Water Dragon Egg, a difficult challenge. Lin realized that the system could also detect the capabilities of others, and his first target would not be easy. Augustine approached Lin, demanding that he hand over his student uniform and badge and leave the Holy Academy immediately. He scoffed, claiming he didn't know what methods Lin had used to trick the association. But for someone like Lin, who had such low talent and resorted to underhanded tactics to enroll, merely standing there was tarnishing the Academy's glory. Lin remembered the past when he had been kicked by some boys who told him to get lost, calling him the son of a trader who thought he could simply buy grain from their shop. They claimed that for someone like Lin, born of scum, merely standing there tainted the air they breathed. Shaking off the memory, Lin confronted Augustine, asking why he sounded just like an alley gangster. How could someone in his position trample on others' dignity simply because of his privilege? It was Augustine, not him, who was tarnishing the Academy's name. A girl asked what Lin was pretending for, while a boy added that someone like him, who had come in through the back door, had no right to talk about dignity. Another boy urged Augustine not to bother with Lin, stating that with Lin's current standards, he wouldn't even pass the test, and sooner or later, he would be expelled from the academy. Lin felt anger rising within him, but reminded himself to calm down. Despite his fury and reluctance to back down, it was true that he had entered through the back door. Arguing was futile. If he was despised by his classmates and teachers, his studies would not go smoothly. It would be difficult to build a solid foundation for becoming a sage-rank mage. Lin turned to leave, ignoring the comments from others who called him a coward. He resolved to find a way to grow stronger quickly. He couldn't rely solely on the system anymore. He would use his own strength to make them eat their words. After that, Lin returned to his dragon ranch, where he was greeted by Butler. He informed Lin that the dragon scale fruits were ripe and that the small fire habitat was producing a normal output, but 𝐸𝐬 was unusually agitated. 𝐸𝐬 used fire to attack Lin, demanding to know why he hadn't upgraded to a larger habitat. Despite this, Lin picked the fruits and told 𝐸𝐬 to behave. He promised that in 2 days he would make the change, and then they could enjoy the dragon fruits together. 𝐸𝐬 replied that Lin had said the same thing 2 days ago and refused to eat anything unless the habitat was upgraded. Lin gently placed the fruits in 𝐸𝐬's mouth and assured him that he would definitely do it next time. 𝐸𝐬 retorted that Lin was a liar, adding that he would only care for Lin if he fed him. Lin found 𝐸𝐬's childishness amusing and decided to leave. He reflected on how the small fire habitat produced 500 gold a day, and after planting the dragon scale fruits, he still had a bit of balance left. However, upgrading the small fire habitat would require 10,000 gold. As he stepped outside, he lay on his bed and realized that after the enrollment that day, he needed to quickly find a way to earn more money. Lin considered becoming a waiter, transporting goods, and taking on a few mercenary tasks. Raising a child was proving to be quite challenging. He got ready when Nike called out to him, saying it was time for breakfast. He agreed and replied that he was on his way. When he saw Nike in the maid's dress, she mentioned that the servant from the inn had said it was the outfit Lin had ordered for her. She asked if it looked strange. Lin reached out and gently ruffled her hair, assuring her it wasn't strange at all. He explained that this was the kind of clothing maids in the human world typically wore. However, he felt he had wronged her, as the academy only allowed servants to accompany students, and he would have preferred to give her a more beautiful dress. Hearing this made her happy, and she replied that she would never feel inconvenienced being by his side. She then hugged him. Lin breathed in the pure, fresh scent of the forest, finding it comforting. He suggested they tidy up a bit before heading to school, and she agreed. As they prepared to leave, Lin thought about how the previous day's admission test had already made him somewhat famous at the Holy Iris Academy. Lin stood in front of a man who stamped his form. He thought that although their attitude toward him was extremely negative, they didn't go out of their way to make things difficult. The man tossed Lin's form aside, stating it was fine, and told him his class was in Zone 1 of Building A, Year 1B. He instructed Lin to report to the teacher himself. As Lin entered the classroom, the teacher, Yisha, commanded him to stop. She asked who had given Lin permission to enter her class. She looked down most on nobles who relied solely on their connections. Even if the whole school allowed him to enter through the back door for the sake of the associate dean, she would never permit Lin to sit in her class. The students wondered about Lin's presence in the class, questioning how he had arrived there according to his grade. Wasn't he the one notorious for using the back door? Why was he walking through the front entrance today? One student urged others to quickly bet on the back door. Another chimed in, asking what made Lin think he had the qualifications to sit with them, given his low-level talent. Lin asked Butler for help in learning about the abilities of all the students. Butler agreed and displayed the information. First was Kalu, a freshman and Lin's first friend. Next was Shua, also a freshman who was known for his prowess in the second round. Lucerne was a first mage and a skilled fisherman, while Yummy was also a top performer in his year. Lin thought to himself that they were all better than him. How could the best academy produce such arrogant individuals who looked down on others? He called out to the teacher, asking what the main topic of her class was. She expressed her concern that he might not be able to keep up due to his low talent. However, she added that if he could prove he could outperform everyone else, he would then have the qualifications to attend her class. Kalu wondered if Lin was really better than them. Yummy replied that the teacher's class focused on magic points. Lucerne chimed in, explaining that ocean magic was all about talent level. The higher one's talent, the more stable their mana output and the greater the purity of their spells. Someone like Lin, with no talent, wouldn't even be able to attend the class, let alone do better than the others. Yisha shouted for everyone to be quiet, then turned to Lin, intrigued by his confidence. She proposed a wager. If he was so sure of himself, why not bet on something more substantial? She offered him a chance. After 1 week, there would be a test for the magic potion class. If he secured first place, she would allow him to attend her class. However, if he failed, he would be expelled from the Holy Iris Academy and would never be allowed to return. Lin contemplated the stakes. Losing meant he would have to abandon everything. It felt like a serious condition. Yisha asked him whether he wanted to accept the challenge. Butler chimed in, explaining that by completing the task, Lin would receive 1 fragment of a water dragon egg and gain 20 magic experience points. Lin considered this. Despite the risks, he still had Butler's support, and since the task had been assigned, it must be achievable. The rewards were enticing as well. With determination, he accepted the challenge. Yisha couldn't believe that Lin still maintained such an attitude after the difficult time he had endured. Not only did he refrain from bringing up the associate dean to pressure her, but he also aimed to manner, dispelling the rumors that surrounded him. The unfolding situation was intriguing, and Yisha looked forward to being surprised by Lin. When Lin arrived at the academy's library, he looked around and remarked, "No wonder others say that the most gorgeous palace in the empire is the library of this academy. It is truly magnificent. There must be countless magical books about various magical points here." As he was about to pick a book, 2 boys behind him recognized him. One said, "Isn't it true that Lin entered the academy through the back door? Why is he even in the library?" The second boy chimed in, "Aren't first years supposed to be in class at this time? Don't tell me Lin got chased out of class for being a stupid person. That would be so shameful." Lin responded, "You two really know how to talk." The library counselor approached the 2 boys and scolded them for being foolish. She reminded them that even as third years, they still didn't understand that noise was forbidden in the library. If they didn't quiet down, she warned, she would deduct their credits. The first boy retorted, questioning whether she thought she was so great as a counselor. The second boy quickly told him to be quiet and suggested they leave, as he didn't want to lose any credits. Reluctantly, the 2 boys departed. Lin reflected that he had been saved by the girl. She then apologized to him. He replied, "But those 2 insulted me. So why are you apologizing?" She explained that, as the chancellor, it was her responsibility to create a conducive environment for reading. Lin noted that she genuinely seemed to have a sense of responsibility. He stated that he wanted to borrow a few books related to magic potions and asked if she could help him find them. She agreed and told him he could call her Vivi. Using her powers, she summoned several glowing books that floated over to Lin. He marveled at the impressive capabilities of the Magic Academy. Vivi informed Lin that these were the complete set of textbooks on magic potions. She mentioned that she had heard he was preparing for the magic potion test, but reminded him that it was a practical exam. not a written one. She added that it wouldn't be a problem if he only read the books. Lin wondered if she was genuinely concerned about him. He recalled a piece of advice he had received, that wealth and beauty could be attained through diligent study. He assured her to, "Don't worry," and he was confident. He then expressed his gratitude, saying she was the first person who hadn't judged him based on the rumors since he entered the academy. He decided that if he passed the test, he would treat her to a meal. With that, he left the library. As he walked away, Vivi remembered a lady had advised her to do whatever she could to get closer to Lin. She sighed, reminding herself not to apologize to those two boys. The scene shifted to Lin's living quarters in the academy, where Jack urged him to stop reading and eat something. Lin agreed, saying he would eat after finishing the book. Jack pointed out that he had been at it all day already. Lin replied, "There's only a week left until the test. After I finish reading, I need to practice outside." 5 days later, exhausted from studying, Lin lay on his bed and muttered to himself that this was exactly what the advice had warned him about. He realized that the key to solving his problems lay solely with him. Lin recalled that creating a magic potion required stable mental power. Beginners often struggled with this instability, which meant they had to add dragon spittle as a supplementary ingredient. However, if he could use authentic dragon spittle, even ordinary people without magical abilities could easily create a top-grade potion comparable to that of a high-level potioneer. The scene shifted to the day of the potion test. All the students in Lin's class were shocked to see him successfully create a potion. One student wondered how Lin could control his mental powers so effectively. Shua, feeling threatened, accused Lin of cheating. Yisha quickly intervened, hitting Shua and asking if he wanted to fail by making such a racket during the exam. Shua thought that Yisha acted more like a lapdog than he did. Meanwhile, Yisha pondered Lin's talent and whether he truly had made such an impressive reagent. She commented that it was indeed a good potion, noting its exceptional quality. If no other student could produce something better, Lin would surely receive the highest score. Hearing the doubts of his classmates, she challenged him, to convince everyone, would he be willing to stand on the podium under the watchful eyes of the entire class and make the potion again? Lin asked if she suspected him of cheating. A girl chimed in, agreeing and questioning who else he thought she could suspect. Another girl added that she knew it was the dragon spittle. E-boy remarked that while creating the potion, Lin must have used a supplementary ingredient to help stabilize his mental powers. If not, he said, how could a low-talent boy like Lin succeed after only 7 days of self-study? Lin pondered the idea of the supplementary ingredient and recalled telling the butler that time flowed more slowly in the training ground than in the outside world, leading him to assume it was possible to practice making potions there. Shaking off his thoughts, he declared that if they were not convinced, he would follow their request and make the potion again. Yisha was taken aback by how easily he agreed. Lin began preparing, thinking about using 5 grams of host face vine flower stems, 10 drops of saliva from the rhinoceros bust demon snake, and 3 grams of a fire and water gem. He remembered how many times he had practiced at the ranch. Yisha watched him in wonder, questioning how he could control his mental powers so effectively. Although Lin's magic output was only at an inferior level, his concentration resembled a state of complete focus. He seemed far more skilled than the students she had taught before. All the students observed as Lin meticulously crafted the potion, and finally, he succeeded once more. Lucerne exclaimed that it was impossible, insisting that Lin hadn't used any supplementary ingredients. Another boy noted that the purity of the potion remained impressively high. The girls began to wonder if they had misunderstood Lin's abilities. Yisha asked him if he had been naturally born with such strong concentration powers. Lin reflected for a moment before responding, "No, I wasn't. I only developed that ability through rigorous training." As he shared this, everyone wondered why it seemed Lin had faced such tough challenges to achieve it. Yisha thought about how, to compensate for his lack of natural talent, Lin must have put in more effort than ordinary people. She considered whether that was why Oliver had made an exception to admit him. If so, even if Lin couldn't become the most outstanding mage in the future, his perseverance would surely inspire the entire academy. She introduced herself as the law enforcer of the academy, but admitted that she had been short-sighted. Bowing slightly, she apologized, acknowledging that she was wrong to prevent him from attending her class before. In fact, 5 other students in the class had created potions that met his standard. But not only was Lin self-taught, he also had the shortest practice time outside of class. As a result, the first place in the test rightfully belonged to him. The butler approached Lin, confirming that his task was complete and presenting him with his reward, 1 fragment of a water dragon egg and 20 experience points. Because the rancher had chosen a more challenging method to complete the task, an additional reward, a teleportation array, would also be given to him. Afterward, Lin settled onto a tree branch. The butler remarked on how Lin's success came not from relying on dragon spittle, but from his understanding of the time flow difference between the training grounds and the outside world. The rancher was indeed wise, he noted. Lin replied that whether it was wise or not, he simply didn't want to leave a stain on the place where my father worked so hard. Besides, how could such precious dragon saliva be wasted in a small setting? I still plan to use it to exchange for real wealth. In his quarters, Lin was busy making potions, marveling at how useful Yea's spittle was. With it, he could easily create advanced potions, and a single bottle could sell for thousands of gold coins. He planned to visit the merchant house the next day to put it up for sale. Just then, 𝐇𝐚𝐧𝐢'𝐬 warned him that if he didn't change 𝐸𝐸's habitat, he would burn down Lin's entire ranch. Lin replied that the new nest for 𝐸𝐸 was finally ready. He glanced outside, wondering if Vivi had finished her work in the library. He recalled promising to treat her to a meal after the test, and if she hadn't helped him find so many books on potions, he wasn't sure how many detours he would have taken. Arriving at the library, he discovered that Vivi wasn't there. Suddenly, a girl placed her hand on his shoulder, confirming, "You must be Lin." He nodded and asked if there was a problem. The girl informed him that Vivi was behind the school building, preparing to confess her feelings to him. Lin felt his face flush at the revelation, and the girl playfully pushed him, saying, "Don't make such an expression. Even if you plan to refuse her, you should tell Vivi directly." Shocked, Lin exclaimed, "Please don't push me." Lin received another main task related to the water egg fragment, which was titled Vivi's Princess Carry. The condition was that he had to be princess carried by Vivi to complete the task and earn his rewards. Angered, he confronted the butler, questioning why he chose that moment to send him such a task. Frustrated, he tried to break the screen displaying the details. A nearby girl, unable to see the screen, wondered what Lin was doing and urged him to hurry. Vivi, overhearing, assured the girl that she would wait until Lin arrived. She then conjured a bee and instructed Lin to follow it to reach her. As he followed the bee, Lin felt something was off. He had only met Vivi once, and while they had enjoyed a pleasant conversation, it didn't seem substantial enough for her to want to confess her feelings so soon. Compared to previous tasks, this one felt more like a joke, but he sensed it wasn't as simple as it appeared. Suddenly, he heard a scream and rushed toward the sound, wondering if it was Vivi in trouble. When he arrived, he found himself in a clearing where blocks of rock floated above the ground, encircled by a blue magic circle at the center. He marveled at the strange scene, questioning why such a place existed within the academy. As Lin approached the blue circle, he noticed that Vivi had already entered and was waiting for the second participant. Confused, he wondered why Vivi had stepped inside. The girl from earlier suddenly appeared behind him and pushed him into the blue circle. With that, the trial began. The girl began to explain her backstory. She had been bullied by seniors, and no one had stood up for her. "But you came in through the back door," she sneered, "and everyone calls you trash. Why is that?" She continued that since Vivi loves helping him, he will make sure she can do that until the very end. We can both wallow in despair together. As Lin stepped fully into the circle, he found himself confronted by sharp spikes looming before him. To his shock, he saw Vivi suspended by chains, helplessly hanging there. Before he could process what was happening, a magical beast, a wolf, emerged, ready to confront him. It attacked Lin with its powers. Lin dodged, wondering how a magical beast had appeared there. He thought about evading again, but what if he froze in fear because of its aura? He would die. Then, he leaped to dodge the attack and realized that the ground beneath him had cracked from the beast's strike. It was incredibly powerful. He marveled at how he could jump so high. After gaining experience points earlier, he had become a second-rank mage. He hadn't expected his physical abilities to improve so much after leveling up, but if that was the case, he might be able to fight the beast. Although it was incredibly fast, he dodged its attack, believing his body could keep up with the wolf's speed. He jumped again, convinced that his attack would also be effective, and unleashed an instant fireball. The fireball struck the wolf, creating a significant impact. Suddenly, some of the chains binding Vivi broke, but she was still hanging. Lin realized he had been so focused on the fight that he had completely forgotten about her. He wondered why she had suddenly dropped down, and now the world around him seemed to tremble as some of the iron spikes were destroyed. But the wolf was still alive, which meant that every time an iron spike broke, Vivi would be lowered. If he didn't eliminate the remaining spikes, how could he save her? Suddenly, an idea struck him. He told her to wait, explaining that there were many skilled wind mages at the academy who would surely come to her aid. She looked scared. Lin remembered that he had just arrived at this place, the same spot where the magical beast had emerged. The gate. When he glanced toward it, he noticed the gate had vanished. He wondered if he and Vivi were trapped inside. Thoughts of the girl he encountered earlier flooded his mind. He realized they had been set up. She had pushed him into the gate, and it seemed she was the same girl he had met in the library. What did she gain from trying to kill them? He pondered whether he should summon 𝐸𝐸, but hesitated, uncertain if Vivi would keep that secret. Just then, the wolf lunged at Lin again. He retaliated with another fireball attack, and, to his relief, he defeated the wolf, gaining valuable magic experience points. Lin contemplated what the phantom wolf was. The butler had said that such questions fell under the jurisdiction of the ranch, and that he should investigate further himself. Anger surged within him. He didn't want to be sidelined in a situation like this. As he stood there, he noticed a purple substance emerging from the wolf's body, drifting toward Vivi. Lin wondered what it was. Lin realized that every time an iron spike broke, Vivi would drop lower, and for each wolf he defeated, she would be moved closer to the safe area he occupied. Suddenly, he saw the wolf split in two. He thought that this design resembled some kind of mechanism. Then it struck him. He remembered reading in the student handbook that students in their 3rd year and above could enter the trial realm to engage in mock battles with demonic beasts. The teachers would set up trial mechanisms based on the assessment criteria, and once they passed, the students would be automatically transported out. He recalled that he had barely made it through that trial himself, so all he could remember was Yang. The wolf's name, Hasuke, had phantom in front of it, suggesting that this was a trial realm meant for upper year students. As 2 wolves charged at him, he deftly dodged their attacks. Looking at the current mechanism's design, he concluded that the key to passing this trial was to save Vivi. He punched one wolf, killing it, and resolved to continue fighting in this manner. As Lin continued to slay the wolves, they began multiplying rapidly. After a while, he realized he couldn't sustain this pace. Each wolf he killed split into 2, and he couldn't handle the increasing numbers with just the fireball spell. If he kept going like this, even if he wasn't overwhelmed by them, he would be forced off the cliff. Recalling when he first inherited 𝐸𝐬's magic, he remembered there were 3 other basic spells he could use besides the fireball: shield, bite, and claw. Speaking the incantation, a shimmering shield appeared in his hand, blocking an incoming attack from a wolf. However, the shield seemed fragile against the wolf's bite. Lin knew this couldn't be the end. He swiftly switched to the claw spell and slashed at 2 wolves. Although the claw spell inflicted severe injuries, it didn't solve the escalating problem. Suddenly, Lin gained an additional experience point for defeating a wolf, even though he hadn't killed anymore. He noticed a magical cluster emerging from the cliff and realized he could use it to knock a wolf off the edge. It dawned on him that knocking a wolf off the cliff might trigger the mechanism. He realized that as long as he could control the numbers, he had nothing else to fear. The wolves rushed at him, but he managed to make them all fall off the cliff, earning experience points with each defeat. It seemed he didn't need to fight anymore. Then, he saw Vivi descend to the ground, and as she approached, she began to cry and hugged him tightly. He reassured her that everything was fine now, that they had completed the trial and would be transported out soon. Just then, a staircase appeared beside them, leading them downward. Vivi apologized to him, saying that as soon as he arrived, he had been tied up at the top and could only watch. She felt helpless. Lin's heart ached for her. He wanted to rescue her. Gently, he placed his hand on her head and reassured her that she didn't need to apologize or feel guilty. She had helped him earlier, and he reminded her that he was not only saving her, but himself as well. If he could free her from the chains, they would be able to escape the trial realm. She replied that she didn't think it would be that easy, that there would be another stage. Lin asked her if, having been at the academy for so long, she knew anything about the trial realm. She apologized again, explaining that the trial realm was primarily for seniors, so she was unfamiliar with it. He pointed out that she didn't need to keep apologizing. Vivi became emotional and promised that she wouldn't do it again. Lin acknowledged that since they had no information, they would have to brace themselves for the next stage. He reminded her that he had already defeated many wolves, which might mean greater dangers awaited them below, but she didn't need to worry. He would protect her. He extended his hand to help her up, but Vivi shook her head, insisting that in the next stage she would fight alongside him. Suddenly, a swarm of bats attacked, and she got scared, hiding behind him. Lin used fire to blow them away and teased her, asking if she would still fight next to him. She quickly replied that it had been an accident. They both descended the stairs, holding hands. Lin asked her if she felt the fog was much lighter down here. She agreed, noting that there seemed to be some kind of sound. Just then, they noticed the stairs starting to crumble beneath them. Realizing the danger, Lin grabbed her hand and started running down. But as they rushed, the stairs began to melt away, and they were about to fall. Lin called for the butler to summon 𝐸𝐬. Meanwhile, Vivi unleashed her powerful wind magic, asking for wings. In an instant, wings formed behind her, and she lifted Lin into the air. Lin marveled at her, commenting on how amazing she was. She smiled, and replied that she had been studying for 2 years. As they soared, Lin congratulated her on completing the task of carrying him like a princess. He realized that not only had she saved him, but he had also inadvertently completed a system task. He owed her another significant favor. They finally reached the bottom, and as Vivi released him, her wings disappeared. Lin noticed the flickering stones around them. When they stepped into the valley, the stones automatically illuminated, creating a mesmerizing effect. They saw a path lined with fire, flickering on either side. As they gazed down the path, Vivi pointed out a portal and asked if that meant they could escape now. Lin considered the wolves he had just defeated, and realized their experience points hadn't registered. He also noted that the path to the portal appeared unobstructed. He told her he didn't believe the designer of the trial would make it that easy for them to leave. Instructing her to step back, he picked up a stone to throw and check for any hidden mechanisms. He tossed the stone, which struck several times against the path and pillars. After a few hits, one of the bricks on the path shifted downward slightly. A wolf statue above the portal unleashed a red beam of light. Lin noticed this, and by warning Vivi, they saved themselves. He thought he knew there would be a mechanism involved. He told her not to worry and assured her he was fine. He believed it was the stone that had triggered the mechanism, so why did it attack them? Vivi asked him to look at the statue, and he noted that it was broken. Suddenly the statue shattered, and a baby wolf emerged, yawning. It released sonic waves, bringing the other wolves to life. Lin realized that since those wolves were awakened by the little white wolf, the key to their escape must be that small creature. He used his claws to attack the fiery wolves, thinking that the dead ones would be revived again and that this cycle wouldn't end. He feared he wouldn't find a chance to confront the wolf cub if he was surrounded by so many foes. Vivi once again summoned her wind power, transforming it into sharp blades to destroy all the enemies. The attack aimed at the small wolf. Lin remarked that Vivi was incredible. Then, the little wolf used a shield to protect itself, shocking Lin. Vivi realized it was an immunity shield. This reminded her of her past, when she returned with a man after encountering a massive merchant fleet. Only one child had come back, having survived an encounter with an 8th-rank demonic beast. The escort team couldn't even breach its immunity. When the reinforcements arrived, there was only one child left alive, hidden among a pile of adult bodies. Someone told her that their magic wouldn't be able to overcome that level of immunity. She shook off the memories and warned that they would die there. Lin, raising his voice, insisted they wouldn't. He urged her not to be afraid, assuring her that there had to be a way. He was there, and he wouldn't let anything happen to her. This reminded her of when she was a child, standing before a giant snake beast, and a man stepped in front of her, saying he was there to protect her. Vivi wondered why she found herself in the same situation again. She questioned what she was doing. Hadn't she sworn never to hide behind others again? Was she really just going to watch them die once more? Even if she might be the one facing death this time, she refused to revert to merely hiding. With determination, she rushed forward with her spear and slashed at a wolf. Lin wondered if she was relying on physical attacks. She apologized, explaining that she had exhausted too much mana, so for now, she could only fight like this. Lin reassured her that she didn't need to apologize. In fact, it was thanks to her that they had figured out a way to counter the immunity shield. Vivi asked what he meant. Lin explained that he would use a fireball to create a passage for her to escape the wolves' enclosure, then asked if she could hold them off by herself for 30 seconds. She promised to do her best. Lin unleashed his instant fireball attack, clearing a path for Vivi, and then leaped from the pillars to get closer to the small wolf. Meanwhile, Vivi battled fiercely with the wolves. Lin considered that since magic attacks would be reflected, he would have to rely on his fists instead. He wondered if this would work as he prepared to punch the small wolf. Lin managed to breach the immunity shield, swiftly striking down the small wolf with rapid punches before unleashing an instant fireball attack that incinerated it. Spotting Vivi, he reassured himself that she appeared unharmed. Meanwhile, all remaining wolves perished on their own. Lin received congratulations for defeating the boss-level monster, earning 10 experience points and the title of Wolf King, a mark that made wolves bow to him. Additionally, he gained 3 opportunities to summon and command a wolf pack, along with mastering a new skill on his own. Reflecting on his newfound abilities, Lin wondered if such rewards were common. Descending from the battle's aftermath, Vivi called out to him, gesturing towards a portal and commenting that it seemed genuine. Placing his hand on it, Lin confirmed it gave the same sensation as when he entered. Upon closer inspection, Vivi realized Lin's body was covered in injuries, prompting her to apologize for not being more helpful. Tearfully, she lamented her perceived inadequacy, to which Lin playfully teased her about apologizing once more. Lin reassured Vivi that his wounds were minor and she needn't worry. He then asked if she would like to accompany him outside, expressing a deep longing to see the sky. As they emerged, they were greeted with congratulations for passing the trial, with their results soon to be announced. Feeling a wave of relaxation upon stepping outside, Lin discovered that his wounds had mysteriously healed. He attributed this to the butler's benevolence, suspecting the servant had secretly aided his recovery, an observation confirmed only upon consulting the student handbook. Returning to his mansion, Lin read from a book left by Nike, learning there were 2 ways to exit the realm: through clearing it, or by succumbing to death. However, he reassured himself and Vivi that despite the realistic pain felt within the high-level illusion realm, they would emerge unharmed. Reflecting on his oversight in not thoroughly examining the handbook earlier, Lin expressed relief in finding their exit strategy, acknowledging that being mauled by a wolf would have been far more agonizing. Word spread among the students about the trial realm. One boy told another that Lin had entered and successfully cleared the trial, even though he was a third-year student. The second boy was shocked and questioned how this was possible, as underclassmen were supposedly ineligible. The first boy explained rumors circulating that a senior responsible for maintaining the trial realm had facilitated Lin's entry, prompting an investigation by the teachers. The second boy realized this meant Lin had indeed cleared the trial. The first boy confirmed this and mentioned Lin had also achieved an A+. The news astonished the other students. The boy continued, revealing that following the incident, teachers suspected an error in Lin's initial entrance test and were allowing him to retake it. Using an orb, students watched as Lin stood before the teachers. As he touched the crystal, it glowed brilliantly. Witnessing this, the students were shocked to learn in the retest that Lin possessed a strong affinity for the fire element, potentially advancing to a mid-level rank. They questioned how someone previously considered low-level could achieve such a feat. Augustine sat off to the side, seething with anger as the students continued to chatter endlessly about Lin. Suddenly, he shouted for them to cease their presumptions and focus on preparing for patrol duty. Determined to judge Lin's abilities for himself, Augustine vowed to find an opportunity soon. The scene shifted to a mercenary shop where Lin contemplated a foreboding chill he felt. The shopkeeper urged him not to leave so soon and offered to renegotiate if Lin felt his items were undervalued. Lin apologized, explaining his distraction, and agreed to sell 15 bottles of potions for 20,000 gold, noting the high quality of his wares. Impressed, the shopkeeper handed over a bag full of gold coins for the purchase. Accepting the payment, Lin promised to consider the shopkeeper's offer to become his distributor. Reflecting on his growing wealth, Lin mused that he wouldn't be short of gold anytime soon. He resolved to finally give 𝐸𝐬 a new habitat upon returning to the ranch. As he reached the ranch, he presented 𝐸𝐬 with a new and spacious fire habitat. 𝐸𝐬 was overjoyed to see it. Lin assured 𝐸𝐬 that he hadn't lied about the habitat. 𝐸𝐬 agreed and was visibly excited about his new home. He demonstrated his happiness by breathing fire, but Lin dodged quickly, putting some distance between them. Lin asked if this was 𝐸𝐬's way of showing affection. 𝐸𝐬 denied it, claiming it was an accident. The butler congratulated Lin, awarding him 5 experience points and 200 gold. Lin's current experience points were now at 27 out of 200, unlocking a new area, the training ground. The butler asked if Lin wanted to proceed there. Lin wondered about the training ground and suggested they check it out. He asked the butler to teleport them there, curious about what the dragon training ground would be like. He imagined it might feature a dangerous flying course or an intense arena, both far more challenging than his small training room. Upon arriving, however, they discovered they were on a small stage surrounded by ocean on all sides. Lin wondered what they would do there. 𝐸𝐬 was angry at the butler and asked if he was kidding. The butler told them both not to be impatient and explained that the more tasks they completed with dragons, the larger the training ground would become. After finishing all the training tasks, they would unlock the Dragon God Arena. Lin and 𝐸𝐬 were intrigued by this prospect. The butler instructed them to start by waving the dragon teasing stick 1,000 times. As Lin picked up the stick, 𝐸𝐬 grabbed it and tried to act cute. Lin asked if the stick wasn't meant for cats and wondered if the butler thought replacing cat with dragon meant they were training a dragon. He expressed disappointment that the task wasn't more serious. 𝐸𝐬 looked disappointed and told Lin it was okay if he didn't want to play with him. Lin remembered his past, waiting for his father to come and play, and wondered if 𝐸𝐬 felt lonely being the only dragon on the large ranch. Lin realized he often came and went in a hurry, and pondered why he cared so much about whether the butler's training had a purpose. He decided to see it as simply playing with the dragons. Lin took the stick and played with 𝐸𝐬, waving it repeatedly. 𝐸𝐬 joined in, and Lin wondered when the playtime would end. He questioned whether this training was for 𝐸𝐬 or for himself, but continued waving the stick diligently. Finally, after completing 1,000 waves, Lin felt a strange sensation as he noticed a giant dragon shadow looming over him, freezing him in place. The butler congratulated him on completing the task and revealed that Lin had also learned a new skill: Dragon Fear. Lin marveled at how such a skill could be learned from waving a teasing stick. The butler announced that Lin had reached the 3rd rank, allowing him to inherit 3rd rank magic like Dragon Fear, which could paralyze any magic beast of lower rank. Lin was surprised to realize he had inherited a new magic skill. He noticed small stones aligning to form a new stage at a distance, signaling the end of that day's training session. He was encouraged to explore again next time. Reflecting on how the training ground expanded with each task completed, Lin gazed at the vast water surface and wondered when he would unlock the Dragon God Arena. 𝐸𝐬 called to him, and Lin acknowledged 𝐸𝐬's desire to play, agreeing to continue in the future and spend more time with him. When Lin touched 𝐸𝐬's stomach, 𝐸𝐬 became furious and kicked Lin, demanding to know who gave him permission to touch him. Lin muttered that 𝐸𝐬 was ungrateful. He thought that, despite this incident, a month had passed without any problems. Teacher Yisha kept her promise, allowing him to join her class. Finally, he began delving into the 10 mysteries of magic, which were previously only passed down by word of mouth. His classmates became much friendlier, and those who had ridiculed him now sought his recognition as their elder brother. The butler remained silent and didn't intervene. Lin had hoped to study peacefully until the end of the semester, but one day while helping Vivi clean the library, he discovered something hidden behind a curtain. He told Vivi about it, and upon investigating, he realized it was his father's magical aura. Curious, he touched it, and suddenly vanished from the library. Lin found himself in a peculiar room, observing the remains of a dragon bound by chains. He wondered why such a thing would be in the academy, and why his father's magical aura led him here. The butler assigned him a task: retrieve the fragment of a water dragon egg, the last wish of the sleeping Fagin. The instructions were clear: break the chains binding the dragon skeleton and help it move on. Lin would be rewarded with 2 fragments and 50 magic experience points. Lin remarked on the unexpected task, his first of medium difficulty. He pondered how to break the chains, considering using fire to melt them. However, his attempt proved futile as the chains didn't melt. Lin realized it wouldn't be so simple, and decided he needed to understand the material properties of the chains first. As Lin stepped on a magical aura beneath the dragon skeleton, the dragon suddenly stirred awake. Lin wondered if it had become a ghost now. The dragon rushed to attack Lin, who quickly raised a shield. Realizing he was just out of the dragon's reach due to being bound by chains, Lin thanked his lucky stars. Angered, he demanded of the butler whether he was risking his life by being there. The butler assured him not to worry. He would ensure Lin remained unharmed. The dragon roared, seemingly pleading for its offspring. Lin wondered if this was the dragon's language. He questioned whether he could understand the dragon because of the butler. The dragon's body, mere bones and flesh, withered away until it was no more. The butler dismissed Lin's inquiries, stating it was beyond the ranch's jurisdiction. Lin angrily threw his hands up, frustrated by the butler's evasiveness. He wondered if he could understand the dragon's language. Could the dragon understand him in return? The dragon continued calling out for its child. Lin asked why it was imprisoned there and what had happened to its child, suggesting that if the dragon told him, perhaps he could help. The dragon continued to plead for the return of its child. Lin wondered if there was any way to communicate with it, and began searching for clues around the room. He noticed a grimoire with no title and wondered if it held any useful information. Opening the book, he was surprised to see a hologram of Oliver appear. Oliver spoke of Zoe, Lin's father, and their research, which, though unacknowledged in their time, would go down in history. Lin speculated if this room had been a laboratory and examined the empty pages of the book. He wondered if the book that had helped awaken the dragon's rage was a result of that experiment. Did his father believe dragons should be liberated rather than slain? Lin pondered if this put his father at odds with Oliver, who seemed to advocate for the opposite. Recalling his childhood, Lin remembered Oliver mentioning mysteries surrounding his father's situation. Once Lin had reached the rank of Sage Mage, Oliver promised to clarify everything and reveal Lin's true family name. Lin questioned why Oliver was willing to help him. Lin decided not to speculate further about the grimoire, realizing it could prove nothing. It was likely left there by some unknown person, and for now, he wouldn't find any new clues there. He resolved to investigate further outside. Surely he would uncover something there. Leaving the room, Lin approached Vivi and asked her to place her hand on the grimoire, questioning if she sensed anything unusual. Vivi replied humorously, noting she could feel the cobwebs he hadn't cleaned properly. Lin was taken aback by her response. Later, as he waited outside, Shua approached and reported that he had inquired around but found no legends or tales about dragons within the academy. Lin then approached teacher Yisha and directly asked if there had been any experiments involving dragons at the academy. Yisha seemed taken aback by the question, asking why Lin thought they would conduct experiments involving such fearsome creatures. Lin noticed a shift in Yisha's expression. Secondly, she questioned why Lin was so curious about such unnecessary matters instead of focusing more on his studies. She informed him that due to his exceptional performance, despite only being in the 5th trial realm, the academy had decided to arrange an additional test for him before the final examinations. If he passed this extra test, not only would he skip 2 grades, but he would also qualify to enter the Mage Trial Tower, the most challenging trial realm in the entire academy. Lin wondered about the trials in the Mage Trial Tower, particularly the most difficult ones. Yisha explained that the Mage Trial Tower was the masterpiece of Deal Gladstone, the academy's only sage rank mage. However, it housed more dangerous mechanisms and ferocious demonic beasts on each ascending floor, making progression increasingly challenging. Recognized students were allowed to enter the tower to test their limits, with outstanding performers receiving special rewards such as the Medal of Honor. Lin commented that she had heard of this before. She mentioned that every time the trial tower opened, the benevolent Orange Empire's king personally attended to present the Medal of Honor. Recipients of this prestigious medal were granted the same authority as academy professors, and were even permitted to study in the Imperial Library, an opportunity to uncover information not available within the academy's walls. Lin wondered if she was subtly hinting at information that couldn't be found within the academy. He told her that he would take the extra test and asked her for the details. She challenged him to defeat her before the final exam. He thought she was joking. How could a 3rd-rank student defeat a 6th-rank teacher? He felt the academy should have just told him straight that he wasn't allowed to enter the Mage Trial Tower. She assured him that during their battle, she would suppress her strength to match his level. He commented that she should have mentioned that sooner. Yisha added that there was still half a month before the extra test, and she looked forward to seeing his performance. Lin received the task of obtaining qualification to enter the Mage Trial Tower, and he had to defeat her without using dragon magic. Lin was surprised by this. Back at home, he thought that a fair fight between 2 3rd ranks seemed reasonable, but Yisha's mastery and control of magic far surpassed his own abilities. She specialized in water magic, which countered his skills. His only chance of winning lay in learning new skills before the extra tests, skills that Yisha wouldn't expect to counter water magic. He kept practicing, but soon realized that mere practice wasn't enough. He needed practical battle experience. Yisha used fire to test Lin, asking if he found it impressive. Lin questioned if Yisha was trying to kill him. He understood that he needed more real-world combat knowledge. As Yisha launched fire attacks, Lin dodged and countered with different magic. Yisha was surprised and asked when he had learned such magic. Lin teased her, saying she wouldn't be able to hit him anymore. Despite the daily fatigue from training and battling, Lin felt a significant improvement in both his magical abilities and his relationship with Yisha. After finishing their practice session, Lin gave Yisha some fruits, reminding her not to forget them. Lin felt fulfilled and happy, which motivated him to continue practicing diligently. Finally, the day of the extra test arrived. Lin stood opposite Yisha in a small ring on the battleground, surrounded by gathered students. Observers commented that Lin had risen to the 3rd rank just half a semester ago, and was now daring to challenge Yisha. Another student remarked that no first-year student had ever entered the Mage Trial Tower, questioning how Lin, with only mid-level talent, could be the first. A boy wearing goggles remarked that Lin had better lose quickly so that the head of household could finish their boring recording task and prepare for the trial tower. Shua challenged Lin, saying if he lost, he would have to wash his hair upside down. Another voice told Shua to stop and praised Lin for being truly amazing. Yisha, as Lin's teacher, instructed him to begin, reminding him that the first to be hit by magic or knocked out of the circle would lose. They both started chanting their spells and launched attacks with multiple fireballs and water balls. Lin dodged Yisha's attacks, noting that she could summon twice as many as him, which was expected from a 6th rank mage. Despite suppressing her strength, she remained formidable. Yisha cautioned him not to be reckless. Lin then surprised everyone by leaping into the air, prompting Vivi to wonder when he had learned that skill. Yisha prepared to use the Raging Silver Snake Dance technique. Lin realized this was dangerous and countered with his Ring of Fire spell, disrupting her attack. Yisha commented on Lin's use of the Ring of Fire to neutralize her Water Snake technique. Lin landed, commenting that the match had been so close. The students observed that Lin's understanding of skill counters was much deeper than that of his peers. However, they soon realized that Yisha was using the 3rd rank Riptide spell, a force that couldn't be outwitted easily. In response, Lin used the Fire Spring spell. Their powers clashed, with Lin's Fire Spring initially being pushed back. A student remarked on how Lin was actually fighting magic with his teacher, questioning his strategy. Yisha told him that charging headfirst wasn't a wise move. She then noticed that the flames weren't being moved upwards by her water column. Realizing that Lin was controlling them to rise, she wondered if he had already mastered the fire element so skillfully. Lin thanked her, explaining that he had taken time to prepare the spell. He then chanted his incantation, declaring his intention to let the meteoric fire fall attack her. Yisha was shocked to realize that not only had Lin become a 3rd rank mage, but he had also learned the meteoric fire arts, a feat almost impossible for 3rd rank mages. He had truly exceeded her expectations. As the blast struck Yisha, Vivi wondered if Lin had won. Another boy questioned how Yisha could have been defeated like that. Yisha countered with the 3rd rank Night Bloom illusion spell. Vivi remarked on Yisha's strength, while the boy observing noted that there appeared to be fish swimming on the battlefield's surface. He explained that within those illusions lay a real river. He had heard that only those who had formed a contract with the water spirit of a specific river could wield such magic. What appeared to be a shield was actually a small teleportation array. Not only could it transfer attacks into the river, but it could also redirect the river's flow back onto the battlefield. Lin asked Yisha if that illusion was truly a 3rd rank spell. She turned to him and confirmed that she was still utilizing 3rd rank power to activate it. As Yisha's spell neared completion, Lin realized he had to act quickly before the entire area was engulfed by her magic. She launched a water attack towards him. Lin recalled that Yisha's spell could divert magic attacks into the river, rendering them ineffective. Could this mean her waterfall shield functioned similarly to the small wolf's shield, immune only to magic? If so, his only hope lay in that vulnerability. Rushing closer to Yisha, Lin surprised her with his speed. He countered her waterfall with a fire serpent spell. The clash pushed him back, impacting the ground beside him. Vivi wondered if Lin had won and what had suddenly happened. Yisha admitted defeat, revealing that she had broken the 3rd rank restrictions to defeat him in their duel. She unconsciously regarded him as a real opponent and looked forward to seeing how terrifyingly strong he would grow in the future. Lin was congratulated by the butler for his victory using magic. He was rewarded with 1 fragment of the water dragon and 30 magic experience points. Afterward, King Levy III arrived. Lin felt nervous as King Levy III arrived unexpectedly. Addressing the students preparing to enter the trial tower, Levy III declared them not only the elites of Holy Iris Academy, but also the future pillars of their empire. He announced that the honor of leadership would go to the first to complete the trial tower, urging them to showcase their abilities. The students cheered loudly in response. Following his address, a man instructed the students to enter the magic trial tower in an orderly fashion. A girl remarked to Lin that she hadn't expected him to be granted permission to enter the tower and speculated that Yisha must have gone easy on him. A boy wearing goggles interjected, asking if the student union only knew how to gossip. He noted he was there as a recorder and insinuated that Lin hadn't won solely with his skills. The girl blamed Lin for possibly influencing the boy's opinion. A member of the student union urged the girl to calm down and not argue in front of the trial tower. She warned Lin that whatever trick he had used to deceive everyone would end there because the president would personally evaluate the students' skills in the tower. Lin wondered if the girl was referring to Augustine. Observing his reaction, she asked if he was scared now. Lin reminded himself that he still had a task to complete: defeating Augustine. He appeared on screen where the butler informed him that the prerequisite task of defeating Augustine in the Mage Trial Tower had not been completed, advising him against starting the challenge prematurely. Lin wondered if obtaining qualification to enter the tower was the incomplete prerequisite, and hoped there wouldn't be additional tasks inside. At the gate of the trial tower, a man informed Lin that he was the last student to enter. Lin apologized and proceeded inside. Another man announced that all students had entered, signaling the start of the trial. Lin pondered what awaited in the Mage Trial Tower. Inside, he found a forest before him, noting that compared to the trial realm, this felt like another world, a place truly for the top 10 upperclassmen. Before entering, a teacher gave him a map of the tower. Lin learned that the Mage Trial Tower had a total of 9 floors, with teleportation points marked on the map for the first 3 floors. Each teleportation point was guarded by a magic beast, and there were several such points on the first floor alone. In addition to potential elimination by magic beasts, defeat in a duel against another student would also count as elimination. Lin, still uncertain of his classmates' strengths, decided to distance himself from the large group and head towards the nearest teleportation points first. He began running and soon encountered a leopard-like magic beast, which he defeated using his powers. The butler congratulated him and awarded him 1 experience point. Lin proudly stated that he reached the 3rd floor in no time. He noted that the strength of the magic beasts on each floor corresponded to the floor number. According to this pattern, the next floor should have 4th rank magic beasts. Upon reaching a magic circle, Lin observed that as he ascended each floor, the number of teleportation points decreased. Moving forward, the chances of encountering others would increase significantly. Upon reaching the 4th floor, Lin resolved to be more cautious. To his surprise, someone emerged from hiding and commented that they had finally found him. Outside the trial grounds, King gazed up at the tower. Yisha stood nearby, contemplating how despite King annual attendance at the battle, the actual events inside has remained hidden from view. They could only observe the students' movements based on the lanterns hanging on the tower. She noticed it indicated the 4th floor. The trial tower was divided into 10 floors. The top 3 floors housed formidable mechanisms where students faced magic beasts ranked 7th to 9th, challenging them far beyond their abilities. The middle 3 floors comprised task stages. Only those who completed their tasks could progress, leading to the elimination of half the students. On the first 3 floors, students needed to defeat beasts guarding teleportation points, with only a few eliminated there. Amidst teams, betrayals, and fierce competition for advancement, only 10 would ultimately pass. Yisha pondered how far Lin would advance. The true trial, she believed, began on the 4th floor. Lin saw a pink screen displaying the condition to clear. He had to obtain 1,000 points before everyone else. He would earn 200 points for each kill, but eliminating another player would deduct 1,000 points from his total. Lin understood that eliminating students would cost him dearly in points, discouraging infighting at this level. With 1,000 beasts for every 100 people, theoretically allowing each person to kill 10 beasts, Lin realized the true challenge lay in achieving 1,000 points before all the beasts were slain. Despite the apparent absence of infighting, any unnecessary kills could result in someone failing to reach the required points and being eliminated. Determined to stay ahead, Lin started running. A hidden observer hurled a jar toward Lin. Anticipating the attack, Lin countered with a fireball, destroying the jar mid-air. Wondering why someone would attack him when eliminating a student meant losing 1,000 points, Lin pushed aside the thought and focused on retreating without wasting any more time. The scene shifts 10 minutes earlier, where members of the student union were discussing. A boy mentioned to someone that he was targeted. Augustine advised that the 4th floor wasn't conducive to fighting other students, suggesting he would wait until the 5th floor to challenge Lin. The boy questioned why Augustine needed to wait, implying he was ready to duel with Lin immediately, having already attained the 4th rank. He challenged Augustine's decision, claiming he had the qualifications to face him now. Augustine remarked that the boy was weak, to which the boy countered by reminding Augustine of their agreement. If he earned more points than Lin on the 4th floor, Augustine would duel him on the 5th. Augustine vehemently declared he wouldn't allow Lin to score any points. The scene then shifts to the present, where Lin was running and encountered a magical beast. Determined to outperform others, he prepared to attack. This scenario had repeated more than 10 times, with Lin encountering a beast only to have it suddenly attacked by someone else. Lin couldn't help but wonder if these encounters were mere coincidences. Lin continued running, aware that time was running short with only 89 monsters left, and no points to his name. He overheard one boy boasting to another that he had already amassed 1,000 points, claiming the points were once again his. The second boy questioned how the first could be so fortunate, mentioning they were also instructed to follow Lin, so luck shouldn't favor him alone. A girl complained that focusing on Lin was wasting their time, making it difficult for them to accumulate points. Lin swiftly approached the first boy, Alan, knocking him down. Seething with anger, Lin demanded an explanation about why they were instructed to follow him and what it meant. The second boy challenged Lin, questioning his sanity and daring him to confront them alone. The girl scoffed, asking if Lin thought they were easy targets. Lin retorted that they were welcome to attack him if they wanted 1,000 points deducted from their score. The two hesitated at the reminder. Ignoring Alan, who remained silent, Lin realized he wouldn't earn any points like this and challenged Alan to a fight to the death. Alan refused, explaining that he had barely managed to save enough points once. He revealed that Saren had ordered them to target Lin, warning that if they didn't assist Saren, they would face severe consequences after leaving the tower. Lin wondered why Saren was targeting him. Alan replied that they also didn't know what Lin had done to anger Saren. Lin had been so focused on searching for beasts that he hadn't noticed their presence in the air. Alan urged Lin to look up. Lin saw people always seem to be ahead of him, no matter where he went. He then noticed the red aura, recalling the man who had attacked him earlier with the jar and wondering if this was related. Alan pointed out how quickly the number of beasts had dwindled in a short amount of time. Lin had no intention of advancing further now. Even if they didn't obstruct him, others surely would. It seemed too late for Lin to reach the 1,000 points. Lin used a fire spring attack above himself, but the red aura persisted. Alan advised him not to waste his energy, as the mark couldn't be erased. From a member of the student union observed Lin's location and remarked that as long as the mark remained, their group would always stay one step ahead of him. They directed their efforts to clear the magical beasts in Lin's direction, confident he wouldn't earn a single point. Lin was shocked to see 2 red power marks pinpointing his location. He wondered how that could have happened. Lin speculated whether the boy intended to create these marks to easily track him, and then conjured several more marks throughout the floor. The boy was visibly startled and quickly dismissed the idea, insisting there were few beasts left and doubting Lin could still manage to earn 1,000 points. Meanwhile, another boy had already reached 1,000 points with only 24 beasts remaining. Lin began hunting them down, swiftly accumulating 600 points with 8 beasts left. He only needed to eliminate 2 more, and then noticed only 1 remained. Lin, filled with anger upon realizing he wouldn't earn enough points even if he killed the last beast, smashed a nearby stone in frustration. Suddenly, a screen appeared, announcing that the student who killed the last beast would receive a bounty ball. This ball would randomly grant 0 to 999 points when opened, with only 1 hour remaining. Lin felt a surge of hope and hurried towards his chance. Elsewhere, 2 students were flying when one asked where the last beast was hiding. The other replied it was too well hidden to find, suggesting they give up and head to the central teleportation circle to rest. At the central teleportation circle, Augustine stood with a girl who questioned whether Saren had gone too far this time. She remarked that using such tactics against a first-year rookie would tarnish their council's reputation. Augustine dismissed her concerns, stating that the trial tower was a place where only the strong survived. He believed if he couldn't handle someone like Saren, then Lin wasn't worth his time at all. Lin, realizing he had only 15 minutes left and couldn't afford to continue searching aimlessly, asked his butler to invoke his title as the Wolf King and summon a pack of wolves to assist him. He informed them about a 4th-rank fire-type beast and instructed them to locate it. The wolves scattered in all directions in search of the target. Students observed the sudden appearance of the wolves and wondered where they had come from. One boy recognized them as summoned beasts, noting that none of their classmates had the ability to summon creatures like that. Concerned about the dwindling time for the task, a 3rd student inquired if the wolves had found any clues. The trial tower's referee requested the wolves to provide updates. 2 student council members noticed the commotion and asked Ken if the wolves had discovered anything. Ken urged them to move aside, stating that the first to reach the target would win. Meanwhile, Lin instructed his butler to activate the teleportation array. Saren approached from behind, commenting on Lin's use of the teleportation array and suggesting he had spent a considerable amount on the trial. Lin suspected Saren had already been to the location ahead of him and remarked that Saren must have been the one who eliminated Lady. Saren calmly replied for Lin not to be anxious as the wolves howled. He explained that it seemed the beast they were seeking was inside the volcano. Some students gathered closer to observe. One boy remarked that it made sense why they couldn't find it anywhere else. It had been hiding inside the volcano. Another questioned the point of searching at all. A 3rd boy voiced concern about the volcano potentially erupting, suggesting they might have reached their limit for that year. Saren suggested Lin should accept this outcome, acknowledging that while he had schemed against Lin on that floor, it was all part of the trials of war and a valuable experience to understand human nature's ruthlessness. Lin sarcastically asked if he should thank Saren for that. As Saren began to walk away, he turned back and asked if Lin wasn't happy with the result. In response, Lin jumped into the volcano, stating he was willing to accept defeat like this. With only 2 minutes left, he reasoned that even if he sustained injuries in the trial tower, he wouldn't die. As he descended, the heat intensified, and he was grateful for inheriting fire magic immunity from 𝐸. Otherwise, his lungs might have been fried by now. Suddenly, a spiderweb ensnared Lin, trapping him. He spotted the beast and realized it had truly been hiding there. He feared becoming its next meal. Attempting to burn the spiderweb with his fire magic, Lin was shocked to find it unaffected. The spider's pointed legs stabbed into Lin's legs, causing intense pain. His butler informed him that the spider was highly resistant to heat. Even lava couldn't melt its web. It enjoyed torturing its prey until they were helpless, then slowly consuming them. Lin wondered why his butler hadn't warned him about such an important detail earlier. The spider stabbed one of Lin's hands as well. Determined not to lose focus, Lin accepted being trapped and unable to move, knowing he could still use magic. He began chanting a spell. Suddenly, the spider pierced his chest in several places. Lin urgently requested the release of his meteoric fire attack. As the meteor fell, about to strike the spider, it quickly hid within its shell by shedding all its legs. Lin lamented that had he not been ensnared in the web, he could have used his fists to break the shell. With less than a minute left and options dwindling, he spotted a windless path out of town. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Noticing the spider's exposed eyes and partially covered body, he considered using the fire serpent spell to drill through. Chanting the spell once more, he commanded it to writhe fiercely. Just as Lin realized the volcano was on the verge of erupting, the spider ensnared him in its web. Butler explained that spiders particularly enjoyed prey softened by magma during eruptions. Lin wondered if that's why the spider had sought refuge inside the volcano and why Butler hadn't warned him sooner. Frustrated, he realized victory could have been his if the volcano had not erupted. As if on cue, the volcano erupted, witnessed by members of the student council. Saren mocked Augustine for choosing such a seemingly clueless opponent as Lin, urging them to move to the next level. Augustine wondered whether they should leave now, noting that the last task still wasn't completed. Saren pointed out that only a few seconds remained and questioned Augustine's belief in Lin's survival. Remarkably, Lin managed to punch the spider. Butler congratulated him for activating the lava bath encounter task, revealing that due to the effects of the fire magic, Lin's skin had become as tough as 𝐸𝐻𝐬's, with the toughness increasing alongside 𝐸𝐻𝐬's level. Lin's clothes were burned off, and he marveled at the miraculous healing of his wounds, though time was running short. Seeing the spider attempting to escape, Lin asked where it was headed and attacked it with fire, ultimately killing it. As time expired, Saren informed Augustine that it was all over and asked for his thoughts, having earlier predicted Lin's elimination. Augustine began to walk away. Suddenly, another boy noticed a shining object in the sky, a mark left by Lin. Tenny realized it was moving toward their direction, indicating that Lin was still alive. Saren asked why everyone was so surprised and reminded them that even if Lin was alive, he would still be eliminated unless he defeated the last magic beast. Lin arrived, apologizing to Saren and carrying the bounty ball with him, which shocked Saren. Some students approached, asking if Lin had really done it, and how many points the bounty ball would yield, urging him to open it. Before doing so, Lin requested someone lend him some clothes. A senior offered him clothing, for which Lin expressed gratitude. A boy assured him there was no need to worry, noting he had been paying attention to Lin even before they entered. Rumor suggested Lin was a budding genius comparable to Augustine. Introducing himself as 𝐸𝐬, he proposed that if Lin advanced to the next floor, would he consider forming a team with 𝐸𝐬. Lin felt a strange sensation, wondering if 𝐸𝐬 was a senior, and why his smile resembled Vivi's so much. Another boy approached, grabbing Lin's leg and pleading to be included. He warned about the 5th-rank magic beasts on the next floor, emphasizing they couldn't face them alone. On the 4th floor, he had been victimized by villains indirectly because of Lin, vowing to repay him on the next floor. Lin asked him to let go, but the boy begged for a chance. Saren questioned Lin, suggesting it was premature to discuss advancing to the next floor. Even if Lin were fortunate enough to defeat the beast, he pointed out that unless the bounty ball yielded 400 points, Lin would still face elimination. Saren urged him to open it. Lin and some of the students anxiously hoped that the ball would indeed provide enough points. Upon opening the bounty ball, Lin discovered it contained 399 points, leaving him dismayed that he needed just one more point to qualify. Saren remarked sarcastically, suggesting they see how Lin would seize the opportunity to challenge the president again. 𝐸𝐬 confronted him, questioning if he dared to laugh after such a disgraceful victory. Lin urged him to let it go, feeling a deep sadness but concluding he had no regrets after fighting for his life. The scene shifted to the 5th floor, where 𝐸𝐬 was surprised to see Lin. Another girl expressed happiness that Lin had not been eliminated. Other boys commented on Lin's strength, noting that eliminated students were typically sent outside the tower, questioning why Lin remained. One suggested it might be because he completed the final task on the 4th floor. Another agreed, praising Lin's performance and suggesting it justified his promotion. A 4th wondered aloud if advancing to the next floor depended on deserving it. The first boy agreed, questioning the purpose of the tower's rules. Saren, visibly angered, demanded to know if Lin had cheated. Lin asked why he would think that, internally debating whether to reveal that Butler had assisted him. Saren accused Lin of cheating, citing his miraculous survival in the volcano and subsequent victory over the beast as suspicious. He pressed Lin to confess. Just then 𝐸𝐬 intervened, urging Saren to stop and criticizing him for not understanding the rules before accusing others. Another boy agreed, pointing out that the trial tower allowed Lin to progress legitimately. The screen displayed the clearing conditions, a duel between two teams where the winners would claim all the points from the losers. Lin was shocked, refusing to believe it was a tournament that would potentially eliminate half of the participants. The rules required participants to confirm their matchups by authenticating their identity cards, which could be obtained by hunting beasts. Those who did not authenticate their cards would not qualify to eliminate opponents. A boy says that whoever gets the identity card first will surely have the upper hand. They all see that killing the beast will deduct 200 points. Attacking students without identity cards will decrease points by 1,000, and those with negative points will be automatically eliminated, allowing the targeted player to automatically advance. There are 500 beasts and 70 students. A boy says he had a total of 1,000 points from the last floor, and 200 points get deducted for every beast he kills. Doesn't that mean he only has 5 chances? Another one cried out, saying that if he had known such things earlier, he would surely have killed more beasts. The description says that the elimination target will be randomly assigned to pairs, and due to the need for an even number of students to participate on that floor, Lin, with the highest points below 1,000, will be added to make up for the shortage. Saren is shocked to hear the reason Lin came to the 5th floor. Lin commented that it was so great and he didn't fight for nothing in the volcano. Then he asks Dia if they should form a team officially. Dia agrees and asks if he was planning to handle that other boy. Alan again grabbed Lin and asked to bring him along, requesting Lin to be his shield. Lin told him to let go. Alan said that he wouldn't let go even if he died and clung to Lin no matter what. Dia commented that it was amazing. Suddenly, a transparent movable hand appeared behind them. Just as Lin felt something, he turned back, but didn't find anything. Dia asked if there was something. He replied that it felt like something was floating there, but it was just his imagination. Dia mentioned that most of the teams had already started moving and they should hurry up as well, or they would be at a disadvantage. Lin agreed and then told Alan that if he wanted, he could follow along, but the order in which they get the magic card would be determined by the amount of effort they put in. If Alan put in the least effort, he would be the last to get the card. Alan agreed and said that as long as he could follow him, he was fine with that, and he knew Lin would be the best. Lin asked him not to rub his face against Lin's legs. Dia commented that those two seemed so amusing. Outside of the tower, a knight told the king that according to the observation light outside the trial tower, all the participants had reached the 5th floor. The king was surprised and said that in the past year, almost half of the students were eliminated at that point, and it seemed that the current year's participants were outstanding, necessitating more rewards. Yisha thought that although this year's students were indeed better than last year's, and the rules had also changed, it was impossible that not a single student had been eliminated yet, and she had a bad feeling about that. Inside, as Dia, Alan, and Lin were battling with the beasts, Dia said that according to his experience of fighting in the wild, the harder it was to defeat the beast, the higher the probability of dropping items. Their individual points weren't a lot, and added together, they only had 14 chances, so they had to choose their targets wisely. After killing the beasts, Dia had 200 points, Alan also had 200 points, and Lin had 399 points left. Dia sat there feeling sad and said that all three of them had only one chance left. Alan hit a tree and said that the drop rate was so low. Lin wondered if it was really because the drop rate was low and whether such an important item like the identity card would be solely dependent on probability. Just then, some vines came from a tree and captured Lin and the others as well. Alan commented that it was the 3rd rank beast, the man-eating vines. He questioned why there was a 3rd rank beast on the 5th floor, which should only have 5th rank beasts. Lin stated that he was so immersed in his thoughts that he didn't detect it. The beast wasn't tricky, but after marking its prey, it would immediately call out to its friends and would not rest until the prey was dead. When they got caught, it was best to immediately fight back and get rid of it. But no one made a move because they knew that a 3rd rank beast would not drop an identity card. Lin thought that he still had 399 points, so even if he killed it, he wouldn't be eliminated. But he wouldn't be able to kill another beast with the remaining points. He wondered if it was worth risking everything for them. Then he remembered that the others had helped him counter Saren, so Lin decided to use his power and attack with a dance that moved wildly like a serpent. But Alan used his water barrier to block the beast. Lin asked why Alan did that. Alan commented that Lin was so shy. Why did he act that way? Couldn't he see that neither of them wanted to fight? Couldn't he see that they all wanted to sacrifice and help themselves? He was the one who decided to step forward, which was unpleasant to witness. Alan admitted that he was a selfish and cowardly person who never dared to stand up when something happened. Despite this, he didn't want to live with guilt either. Lin still saved him even though he had made her suffer. How could Alan continue to live like that? Then he began to chant his spell. Dia commented that it was only a 3rd rank beast, so why was he putting on such an act? Alan mentioned that Dia stole his hard work. She replied that he was so righteous, and she wouldn't do that again. Alan asked how he could become close friends with them both after leaving the tower. Then Dia and Alan tried hard to free themselves. Alan asked Dia if he had killed the man-eating vine. Dia replied that his points weren't deducted, so the potion just now wasn't enough to kill it. He added that it wasn't a human-eating vine, but a 5th rank monster disguised as one, the puppet tree. He explained that when encountering man-eating vines, they typically instinctively fight back immediately. However, the vines of the puppet tree tighten more as their prey resists, disguising themselves as man-eating vines to lure their victims into constant struggle, hastening their own demise. Alan commented that he had never seen such a shameless tree. Lin asked how to deal with the puppet tree. Dia replied that someone needed to dig out and destroy its roots, only then could they all be saved. But they were all trapped, with no one available to dig out the roots, leaving them hopeless and doomed. Lin managed to free himself and declared that he would take care of it. Alan was shocked at how easily Lin had freed himself. Lin replied that it was simple because his body was so tough. When the vine tried to strangle him, it ended up strangling itself. He thought it was due to his body toughening from the volcano encounter, but couldn't reveal the truth. He asked if they understood. Dia asked him if he knew how to use a knight's fighting spirit. Alan commented that it was amazing and asked if his fighting spirit was as high standard as well. Lin thought that not only did they understand, but they also helped create such a good reason, which was expected of them. He said, "Let's not stall any longer, it was time to dig." The scene shifts to the student union where Saren reminded Augustin about the duel on the 5th floor and why he wasn't participating. The girl shouted at Saren, saying it was enough and asking if he knew that 100 points would be deducted for attacking non-elimination targets. Was he suggesting he wanted Augustine to be eliminated? Saren replied that he knew. But why did Augustine always want to fight Lin? What exactly did Lin do that was worthy of Augustine's attention? Augustine approached Saren and showed his card. The girl was shocked and asked Augustine how he showed his identity card to Saren. Augustine's elimination target was Lin. So what if Saren did something foolish again to stop Augustine from dueling with Lin? Augustine replied that Saren wouldn't be able to do anything because he could never defeat Lin. After saying that, he headed ahead. Saren was shocked to hear and wondered why Augustine told him he could never defeat Lin. Was it because Lin jumped into the volcano while Saren didn't? Even the trial tower thought Lin was more suitable to be Augustine's opponent. He left, thinking others should see that Lin wasn't suitable to be Augustine's opponent. The scene returns to Lin, where he dug around the tree a lot with his hands, injuring himself in the process. He thought the digging was deep and hard, and the puppet tree's roots were adept at hiding. The soil was as hard as metal blocks, and even though he was tough, he'd get injured if he continued. Daya warned him that even though the magic beast dropped an identity card, Lin had abandoned them long ago and couldn't use any magic, which might agitate the puppet tree. He lacked tools to dig. Just then, Alan saw something moving there, so he told Lin about it. Lin wondered why he hadn't found it yet, realizing it was because the thing kept moving around. He punched it to stop its movement, hitting it several times, but it moved so fast. Then Dia and Alan used their powers to conjure armor on Lin's body. Lin asked how they were casting the magic. Dia replied that they were fine and could handle his level of speed. Alan agreed, saying he was about to catch it, so they shouldn't let Lin show off alone. Lin thought that even though they had killed countless beasts together before, it was only at that moment that he truly felt they were a team. He used his fire blade to attack the creature and cut it into 2 parts. All 3 of them were congratulated for obtaining an identity card. Lin commented that a card had indeed appeared. Dia and Alan freed themselves, and Alan remarked that Lin had managed to get an identity card. Daya added that Lin really deserved it. Lin denied it, saying it wasn't just his card. There were 3 cards. Daya was happy to receive his card, and Alan received his as well, wondering if a magic beast could actually produce so many cards. They learned that based on their battle with the puppet tree, key information and values were recognized. Dia was acknowledged as the guardian for showing strong perception and understanding the root's movements. Alan was acknowledged as the observer for observing and providing crucial insights. Lin was acknowledged as the breaker for leading the charge and delivering the final blow. Each team member received their respective card. Lin commented that it turned out he wasn't the only one recognized. It was the result of their combined efforts. Alan became emotional and thanked Lin, hugging him. Dia said that if it weren't for Lin, they wouldn't have come this far. After that, Lin suggested they hurry and cultivate to prove they deserved their identity cards. Alan complimented Dia on his excellent recovery elixir and jokingly asked if he wanted to be his second older brother. He asked why Alan liked finding older brothers so much. Lin mentioned his opponent was Augustine. Daya said his was Greena, and Alan realized his opponent was Saren. Upon this realization, Alan started crying and begged Lin to save him. Lin replied that they should use the determination and mindset they had when defeating the puppet tree, with Alan being the observer. Suddenly, a green spell attack aimed at them. Lin saw it and blocked it with his shield, warning Alan about the sneak attack and telling him to be careful. The attack was the Stormblade, and Lin found it incredibly powerful. His shield broke, prompting Alan to ask if he was all right and why Lin had helped him block the attack. Alan insisted he didn't need to be saved by Lin. Lin replied that there was a reason Alan called him the Big Brother. Daya told both of them to stay alert, and then Saren appeared. Saren said to Augustine to just look at Lin and ask if he still thought Saren wasn't worthy of being Lin's opponent. Lin couldn't even withstand one of his attacks. Daya asked Saren what the meaning was behind always resorting to sneak attacks. Alan told Saren that his opponent was him, not Lin, and questioned Saren's courage in openly attacking someone who wasn't his designated opponent, risking elimination. Saren countered, saying he never attacked Lin directly. Lin had intervened to protect Alan by blocking the attack. He reminded Alan that the tower used the locked target to determine opponents, and if Lin were to leave Alan and run away, there was nothing he could do about it. Then he launched an attack with Wind Dance gracefully. Daya warned Saren that winning without fighting fairly would only make more people look down on him. Alan called Saren shameless, and predicted that after eliminating Alan, Saren wouldn't be able to manipulate things behind Lin's back. Then Saren attacked, causing a huge blast. As the fog cleared, Lin had used his shield to protect them. He asked Alan to stand up and stop talking about being eliminated. Since Saren could attack them by exploiting loopholes, they could use the same tactics. Saren was strong, but not stronger than the 3 of them together. Alan was deeply moved by Lin's words. Saren wondered aloud, suggesting they not debate whether the 3 of them could defeat him, even if they were united. Lin and Dia prepared to attack Saren, who created clones of himself, challenging them to see how they could handle the onslaught. Dia chanted a spell to protect them from attacks and enhance their agility. They engaged in battle with Saren's clones. Lin asked Alan to use his power of observation to identify the real Saren. Alan chanted and used his ability to pinpoint the real one. As he indicated the real Saren, Lin rushed forward to attack him. Saren asked if Lin was really attacking him. Lin grabbed Saren and demanded to know what he had been saying. Wasn't the tower the one that determined the opponent? Saren awkwardly admitted he had been attacking himself. Lin took Saren away, visibly worried, and asked what he was planning to do. Suddenly, he noticed the depth and caught sight of the wings of wind. Saren told him that Lin wouldn't have time to use that. Ignoring him, Lin took Saren and leaped into the depth, creating a huge hole. He was injured, but not severely. Alan and Dia arrived on the scene. Alan asked if Lin was all right, while Dia questioned why Lin took such a dangerous step. Lin replied that at least he was still okay in the end. Dia asked if he was hurt and offered him the elixir to heal himself. Saren got up, asking if that was the reason Augustine said Lin was stronger than him, attributing it to Lin's determination in everything he did. Lin turned and asked if Saren really thought he was stronger, and if so, why he never dared to battle Lin head-on. Saren, already a 4th-level mage with significantly greater power than Lin's, knew a multitude of spells compared to him. Yet, in the previous levels, Saren hadn't relied on his own strength to earn points. Even in the 5th level, Saren wished to exploit the fact that he couldn't directly attack Lin to secure victory. Was Saren lacking confidence in his ability to defeat Lin without resorting to these small tricks? Lin's accusation that Saren was afraid of losing to him shocked him. Saren retorted, stating he never viewed Lin as a worthy opponent. He simply didn't consider Lin capable enough. Lin shouted back, accusing Saren of being afraid he would lose. Saren argued that he had considered what would happen if Lin managed to kill more beasts, necessitating his efforts to prevent Lin from leveling up. Even surviving the volcano ordeal couldn't make Lin stronger than Saren, Saren reasoned. However, he couldn't allow Augustine to think less of him. Moreover, Saren had coincidentally desired to eliminate Alan, and in that case, he could use Lin to achieve that goal. Lin confronted Saren, accusing him of avoiding direct battles because he feared losing. Lin dismissed the idea of Augustine approving of a coward like Saren, thinking he was stronger than him. Infuriated, Saren retorted that Lin had no right to lecture him just because he won and should stop nagging. He then questioned why they were waiting and urged them to come and eliminate him. Alan unleashed his powers, prompting Saren to ask Lin if he would give him a chance to face him directly next time. Lin responded that he would wait for Saren outside. As Alan moved to attack Saren, a protective light from a sword intervened. Looking around, Saren found Grina there and asked why she was present. Grina explained that Augustine had ordered everyone to cease fighting and gather at the central teleportation array. Alan questioned the reason for this interruption, expressing his frustration about potentially missing out on leveling up. Lin added that even if it were a genuine gathering, there was no reason they should be prevented from leveling up. Grina asked if they hadn't realized yet that the tower had lost control. Initially, the panel began to malfunction. A boy attacked by a beast was not transported out of the tower and died there. Grina explained that the protective layer was also losing control, preventing those killed inside from being transported out, and some died at the hands of others. Saren wondered how that was possible. Lin checked and confirmed that the panel was indeed in a chaotic state. Alan wondered if someone was going to be killed there. Grina instructed Saren to quickly treat his wounds as she was a wind mage, and then accompany her to inform the others to gather at the central teleportation array. As Lin, Dia, and Alan arrived there, they saw giant green hands. Alan panicked and suggested they retreat, relying on Lin. Dia, however, found the sight impressive. A boy with an injured hand approached and explained that Augustine had mentioned it was the creature stuck in the central teleportation array, causing the teleportation layer to malfunction. Grina approached Augustine and informed him that all the students had been gathered. She reported a total of 22 deaths, 6 serious injuries, and 3 students missing. They were uncertain whether those eliminated at the 4th level or within the tower had managed to escape safely. Alan expressed concern about the missing person, suggesting they might still be alive. Dia was shocked by the loss of 20 elite students who had entered the 5th level. Augustine turned to Lin and remarked that compared to the others who had perished, Lin was incredibly fortunate. Lin questioned what Augustine meant by that, asking if he was implying that Lin should have been one of those who died instead. Augustine agreed with Lin, acknowledging his luck but reminded him that he was still a student of the Holy Iris Magic Academy. As they prepared to confront the monster, Augustine suggested that Lin should stick close to him for his own safety. Just as they were discussing this, a green tentacle attacked Lin, but he managed to summon a shield to protect himself. The monstrous creature emerged, its enormous size daunting the students. One student wondered if this was the creature that had managed to sneak into the tower, noting that there were no records of such a demonic beast in their books. With the protective layer compromised, they questioned how they could defeat such a creature, especially considering the strength of its tentacles. A boy expressed his wish to leave the tower immediately. Augustine intervened, unleashing a lightning strike against the monster, shocking the onlookers. Lin followed with a rapid fireball spell. The boy marveled at Lin's skill and noted that not only Augustine but also Lin, who had entered through the back door, was engaged in battle. Alan, curious about the backdoor entrance, questioned the boy. He declared he wouldn't allow anyone to speak ill of Lin and suggested the boy stop hiding behind excuses. The boy retorted, questioning Alan's tone and suggesting he was ready to fight as well, claiming he was no less capable than a first-grade student. Lin cast an immediate fireball while Augustine unleashed a lightning attack on the monster. Lin observed that his attacks seemed to cause minimal damage against the creature's sturdy, golden body, but he wondered about Augustine's impact. Augustine, considering his options, focused on how to evade the creature's defenses, while keeping an eye on Lin's actions. They continued targeting the creature's tentacles. Augustine glanced downward and noticed others also engaged in battle. Lin descended and commented on Augustine's usual arrogance, despite being popular. Alan advised Lin not to judge Augustine solely on his demeanor, noting Augustine's courage in facing danger head-on. Dia added that the students had immense trust in Augustine. Augustine disclosed that the tower's protective layer had already ceased functioning. Grina emphasized the collective responsibility for the students' safety and stressed the need for everyone's assistance. Saren agreed, asserting that all those who entered the tower were elite academy members unwilling to act as cowards. Augustine remarked that it was precisely because everyone was an elite of the academy. He then wondered if Lin had something to do with this realization. A boy expressed his determination to join the battle, confident he could perform as well as any first grader. Lin acknowledged the boy's resolve, finding it effective in boosting morale. Augustine then directed everyone to prepare for battle. He assigned Grina and a few students to lead the analysis of the monster's attributes. Saren and others were tasked with forming the vanguard. Augustine instructed the remaining students to protect each other and begin suppressing the monster's power. He ordered preparations for a capturing formation. The students conjured a purple magic circle beneath the beast. As Augustine commanded the capture, chains emerged and ensnared the creature's tentacles. Augustine called on fire spell students to be ready. They chanted and launched their attacks at the restrained monster. Augustine then ordered a wind attack to push it back, causing the beast to stagger. Dia, feeling optimistic, asked if they had succeeded. Alan, surprised by his confidence, remarked that they hadn't even analyzed the situation yet, implying they acted purely on instinct. Suddenly, the beast opened its mouth and emitted a piercing sound that affected everyone severely. A boy identified it as an early piercing spirit spell, making it difficult for them to withstand the noise. Lin and Saren coughed up blood in response. Augustine urged them not to give up, attributing the situation to his own negligence. He called upon those still conscious to help him attack the beast's mouth. Lin felt disheartened, believing their combined efforts were futile as the monster remained unharmed. He wondered how they could possibly defeat such powerful spirit beasts with their current strength. Remembering words from his butler about inheriting dragon power at the 3rd level, Lin recalled that the shock effect varied with the rank difference between beasts. He realized he also possessed the ability to execute spirit spells through the power of the dragon. Despite his doubts, Lin attempted to use this power but still struggled, feeling the vast rank difference rendered his efforts useless. However, his spell summoned a dragon infused with golden rage, roaring loudly as it appeared. The dragon rushed to attack the beast, and the student council also joined in, helping to force its mouth shut, silencing the sound. Grina dropped to her knees, relieved that it had finally stopped. Augustine asked her if she felt that, wondering what caused the demonic beast to pause for a moment and if he was overthinking it. Lin turned to the butler asking what had happened and if 𝐸 had come out and could come out on his own. The butler explained that the dragon's might was a skill 𝐸 had acquired in the training ground solely through his own efforts, allowing the host to use it as well, though it was advisable for 𝐸 to use it only once daily given his current physical condition. 𝐸 asked why Lin was making such a fuss, questioning why he hadn't used the dragon's fear at that moment. Lin retorted, asking 𝐸 why he hadn't mentioned that earlier. 𝐸 replied that if he had told Lin earlier, he would have been taken to the training ground daily to acquire those skills and wouldn't have had time to play with him anymore. Alan told Augustine that they owed him for stopping the demonic beast for 1 second. He had figured out its weaknesses and attributes, revealing it was a 6th-rank dark attribute demonic beast, the Nightmare Troll. Grina asked how a Nightmare Troll could be so large and why it didn't have any scales. Alan replied that he wasn't sure, but that's what his magic told him, and if it was a Nightmare Troll, only light attribute attacks would be effective against it. Augustine realized no wonder their previous attacks had been useless, and why his lightning strikes and Grina's light arrow still did some damage, though they only had 2 light mages, which wasn't ideal. Alan explained that compared to normal nightmare beasts, if that thing dragged them into the nightmare, it would be even worse. Before he could finish his words, Saren lunged at Augustine with his sword, laughing maniacally as if he wasn't conscious, declaring that he had finally defeated Augustine and was now the strongest student at the Holy Iris Academy. Grina bound Saren with light magic, and then she saw Alan start acting like Saren as well, saying that he could finally leave the tower. Several more students began behaving similarly, one declaring victory over a normal student and proclaiming he could now ascend to the 6th floor. Another student pleaded for them to stop their erratic behavior. Grina noted that everyone was affected and wondered if this was what Alan meant about being dragged into a nightmare. Lin and Dia remained unaffected. Lin blocked the attack and asked Dia if he knew how to restore their consciousness. Dia apologized, explaining he didn't know how to snap them out of that state. Suddenly the beast did something to them again, prompting Alan to urge Dia to leave the tower. Lin asked Alan to stop, accusing him of lying about leaving the tower. Meanwhile, students approached the beast, one thanking it for granting them glory, while another claimed first place and asked Aisha to join him. Augustine pleaded with them not to go and to return. Grina urged Augustine to calm down, noting his bleeding hadn't stopped, and reminded him he was their only hope and couldn't fight in his injured state. Augustine observed that the beast was draining the students' lives. Augustine rushed toward the beast, urging it to spare the future of Holy Iris Academy, then unleashed his power against the monster, demanding that it release everyone. Grina was relieved to see Augustine's rank increase. Unexpectedly, Lin couldn't bring himself to hate Augustine anymore. Augustine realized his attack was effective this time, enduring numerous counterattacks without sustaining any wounds. His powerful strike shattered the restraining magic with a single screeching blast, reducing their dwindling forces to just 10 people. As a tentacle moved to attach itself to Augustine's head and began draining him, the normal students attempted to attack, but their efforts were futile. Another tentacle aimed at them all. Lin, furious, warned that everyone would perish if this continued. He then asked the butler if 𝐸 could keep using Dragon's Might. The butler urged him to calm down, explaining that Dragon's Might couldn't be used excessively. While harmless the first time, repeated use would lead to severe backlash, potentially causing an explosion. Lin gritted his teeth and unleashed Dragon's Might, feeling intense pain as he did so. He charged at the beast with his claws. Grina shouted that it was futile and only light attribute attacks would work, but they witnessed the tentacles being cut. Lin thought to himself that it was as he expected. Not only Dragon's Might but all dragon-type attacks were effective against the beast. Dragon's Might was the best skill for penetrating its defenses, but he wondered how much more his body could endure. Lin floated around the beast, realizing it wasn't good. Could it be that activating Dragon's Might was a trigger? Augustine arrived to assist Lin, remarking that he was fortunate. After Grina healed Lin, he asked her to go and help Augustine first. She replied that Augustine had ordered her to heal Lin before him, leaving Lin shocked. Augustine explained that he had noticed only Lin's attacks were effective against the beast, speculating that luck might have played a part. He didn't want to place too much expectation on Lin, but acknowledged his contribution. Augustine urged Lin to take the luck he had and share it with others. Suddenly, the beast attacked Augustine and Grina with its tentacles, killing them. Lin was in shock. The beast then turned its attention to Lin, but 𝐸 pushed him aside, taking the attack himself. Lin discovered everyone else had been killed. Realizing there was nothing he could do to save everyone, Lin contemplated using 𝐸's power. However, his clan had been exiled from the Empire due to his father's connection to dragons. If his identity was exposed, it would be even harder to clear his clan's name. Despite his doubts, Lin knew he couldn't hesitate. Even if his secret was revealed, he owed it to those who had saved him before to shoulder the responsibility and save everyone. Then, Lin summoned 𝐸 and mounted him. 𝐸 asked if the beast was the one tormenting him, to which Lin agreed. He requested 𝐸's help to lure the beast away from everyone, and then destroy it. The scene shifted outside the tower, where the king awaited news. A man approached and apologized for keeping the king waiting. The king expressed concern over the prolonged absence of students, and questioned what exactly the Holy Iris Academy was doing. The man explained that their colleagues had investigated and found that the tower's teleportation array was completely disabled, making entry and exit impossible. Additionally, the tower's rules had become highly chaotic, indicating a potential danger within. The king asked for a solution. The man appeared troubled, informing the king that they were attempting to intervene from outside the tower, but all efforts so far had failed. They had even tried to magically summon the dean but had received no response. Enraged, the king demanded to know how his esteemed Holy Iris Academy, the Empire's premier institution, could allow such a situation. He questioned why the highest-ranking students were endangered in the tower while everyone outside could only wait, and demanded to know what actions were being taken. Yisha urged the man to attempt contacting the dean again. The knights reminded her to mind her etiquette, but she couldn't help but feel frustrated at their concern for formalities in such a dire situation. She apologized to the king and informed him that her colleague had sensed a dragon's aura within the tower. The king and the man were shocked to hear this. The king questioned how a dragon, supposedly sealed away east of the Rift Valley by humans, could have breached the school grounds so disastrously. The scene shifted back to Lin, who recounted to 𝐸 the moment he had realized 𝐸 was being chased by the beast instead of attacking the injured students. 𝐸 noted there were many humans present. Lin, observing the uniforms of Holy Iris Academy, recognized the boy with goggles among the fallen students from the 4th floor elimination. Realizing these were their classmates, Lin ordered 𝐸 to counterattack. He instructed 𝐸 to use Dragon's Might and split their attack strategy. 𝐸 would take the left while Lin took the right, focusing first on eliminating the troublesome tentacles. They executed their plan, forcing the beast to retreat. Afterward, Lin noticed a fluctuation in Dragon. The entire area plunged into darkness as eerie beats floated through the air, imbued with ominous power. Lin received a warning indicating a potent dragon aura nearby, prompting swift evacuation. Lin pondered the nature of this dragon aura, surprised that it could emanate from what appeared to be a nightmare troll. 𝐸 sensed something amiss during their recent skirmish with the creature, noticing its black scales and mistaking them for dragon scales. Lin recalled Grina's observation that ordinary nightmare trolls lacked such distinctions. 𝐸 further revealed that the creature dared to attack 𝐻𝐬, a member of the dragon clan. As the beast unleashed dark energy, Lin urgently instructed 𝐸 to evade. 𝐸 questioned whether Lin wanted to flee, but countered the attack with a burst of fire. Lin felt relief seeing Yea's skill. However, the creature's immense power eventually overwhelmed them, leaving Lin and Ye injured. Ye noted that the beast was more than just a creature. It possessed dragon-like qualities, prompting Lin to wonder about its connection to the dragon clan's magic. Lin noticed Ye's severe injuries and realized they couldn't afford to directly confront the beast's magic again. He instructed Ye to heed his commands from now on, emphasizing the need to outmaneuver rather than face the beast head-on with magic. Ye questioned whether Lin thought the beast's magic was stronger than his own. Before Lin could respond, the beast launched another attack. Lin swiftly ordered Ye to jump to dodge, and Ye obeyed, evading the attack. Lin directed Ye to dodge the beast's subsequent attacks, guiding him closer until they could leap onto the creature's head and strike its blind spot. Ye followed Lin's orders meticulously, rushing to strike at the beast's head and warning it not to underestimate him again. Suddenly, green vines emerged from the beast, threatening both of them. Ye sensed a disturbance in his magic power. Lin was astonished to discover that the beast could absorb Ye's magic, intending to render him lifeless. Acting quickly, Lin used his claws to sever the vines, but more entangled him. Ye anxiously observed Lin's predicament. Fueled by anger, Ye unleashed a new fire attack against the beast. Lin observed that Ye had mastered the dragon's breath skill in combat, earning a significant 100 growth points. With Ye's defeat of the beast, he gained an additional 500 growth points, pushing him to the 4th rank. Ye, fueled by rage, demonstrated his new strength. Lin noted Ye's current abilities: Bite, Rock Smash, Dragon's Breath, Dragon's Might, middle rank Fire Immunity, Physical Immunity, along with Fire Shoot, middle rank Shield, and self-recovery for magic. Ye approached Lin, declaring his newfound strength. Lin praised Ye as the strongest, reflecting that despite Ye's external changes, he remained the same at heart. The butler remarked that due to Lin's minimal contribution to the kill, he earned only 5 experience points, leaving Lin feeling disheartened about his progress. Despite this, Lin was promoted to the 4th rank mage. Feeling conflicted about his promotion, Lin lay down, pondering the trial ahead and the imminent transfer of all students outside in 3 minutes. As they defeated the nightmare troll, everyone managed to escape, but they heard faint cries and discovered the beast had transformed into a small, surviving dragon. Upon closer inspection, Lin found a tiny dragon inside a jar, prompting Iya to roar in recognition of his kind. As Lin observed the small tentacles attached to the crying baby dragon, he speculated that the energy fluctuation preceding the nightmare troll's attack and the sound they heard were not from the troll itself, but from the distressed cries of the dragon. It seemed the nightmare troll intended to use the baby dragon's energy to grow even more powerful. Ya couldn't tolerate this cruelty any longer and promptly shattered the jar, rescuing the small dragon and incinerating its bonds. He vowed to exact vengeance for how the dragon clan had been mistreated. Lin acknowledged that while the nightmare troll was the primary antagonist, it might not have acted alone. He questioned whether a demonic beast could control a young dragon without external assistance, and pondered if this incident was part of humanity's experiments on dragons. It became evident that the baby dragon was the offspring of the imprisoned dragon, revealing a deeper connection to their plight. Lin hesitated to reveal to his father that the nightmare troll might also be a result of experimentation. He wondered if his father and Oliver could really condone such treatment of a dragon's child. Suddenly, exhaustion overwhelmed Lin, and a strange sensation suggested he might be teleporting out of the tower. Realizing further contemplation was futile for now, he resolved to continue his investigation once he was out. He instructed Yi to take the small dragon to the ranch and promised to bring medicine later for its wounds. As all the students began to emerge from the tower, Yisha urged people to check on the injured and seek medical assistance. They were shocked to find all the students lying outside. Yisha approached Lin, asking what had happened inside and about their condition. Lin recognized Yisha's voice but struggled to respond before collapsing once more. Urgently, Yisha called for swift medical aid to save him. After that fateful day, the king was furious and ordered the academy to investigate the incident. The teachers at the academy were equally incensed, determined to uncover the culprit behind the tragedy. In an effort to save as many students as possible, the king spared no expense, deploying the palace's best medications and medical experts. Despite their efforts, some students succumbed to their injuries, while others remained severely hurt. Out of 100 students, only 28 survived, and Augustine received special attention from the academy. Augustine confided in Yisha that he wasn't the true savior. Lin was. Alan and Dia approached Lin, informing him that everyone was gathered downstairs. Dia praised Lin as their hero and reassured him not to worry. Everyone was waiting for him. Lin jokingly asked him to stop, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of the situation. It seemed as though the entire school approved of him, elevating him to a status akin to Augustine's. Yet Lin found no joy in this newfound recognition. After they gathered downstairs to pay tribute to the unfortunate students and pray for their souls, Lin couldn't fathom how anyone could find happiness amidst such tragedy. He wondered if his father knew about the massacre and if it somehow involved him. The next day, Lin entered the secret lab in the library, where the skeleton dragon asked about its child. Lin realized the small dragon must be the offspring of the skeleton dragon and instructed the butler to bring it out. As Lin held the small dragon, he asked the skeleton if it was indeed the small dragon's parent. The skeleton dragon confirmed this, but the small dragon was initially frightened and sought refuge on Lin's head. The skeleton dragon reassured its child not to be afraid. Suddenly, it began radiating light, and Lin watched in astonishment as flesh and blood formed around the skeleton. Soon, the skeleton transformed into a shining female dragon, proclaiming herself as the small dragon's mother. Lin found himself able to understand her language and considered that this ability might allow him to escape related matters. Then Lin released the small dragon to reunite with its mother. The dragon was overjoyed to see her child alive and well, considering it the most precious thing in the world. She expressed her gratitude to Lin, referring to him as Zoe, and assured him that he had fulfilled his promise by returning her child safely. Lin clarified that it was his father who had made the promise to return the dragon's child. The dragon wondered if Zoe had children of his own. Lin confirmed this, revealing that he was Zoe's son, named Lin. The dragon explained that her physical body had been destroyed, and now she could only perceive the world through magical energy. She sensed a similarity between Lin's and his father's magical energies, and asked if Zoe had been conducting experiments on their clan members. Lin reluctantly admitted that his father had indeed been involved in such experiments. He explained that he didn't know where she had been, but according to common belief, his father had initially betrayed humanity and then saved the last remaining dragons when humanity had almost wiped them out. Lin thought he had understood his father well initially, but the deeper he delved, the more he realized he didn't truly understand what kind of person his father was. The dragon admitted she, too, didn't fully know Zoe's nature, but she believed he was different from others who experimented on her kind. Knowing Lin wanted to ask about past events, she trusted him and his father, leaving her child in Lin's care. Before disappearing, she asked Lin to relay a message to Zoe. If he encountered the guardian of the Rift Valley, tell him it wasn't the edge of the world, and she hoped to explore the new world beyond the valley. Lin was left pondering this message and asked the butler to clarify what it meant. The dragon wished for her child to live happily, and vanished. The butler congratulated Lin for completing the task and rewarded him with 2 water dragon fragments and 50 shared dragon's nest magic experience. Lin stood with the small dragon, contemplating the true nature of her imprisonment. He realized that the dragon's chains weren't physical, but rather the deep emotional bonds that kept her tied to her child, sustaining her body through sheer willpower all this time, just to ensure her child's survival. Lin remarked on the sentimental nature of dragons, which contrasted sharply with common perceptions of them as fierce and aloof creatures. The butler congratulated Lin on acquiring a new sleep dragon, and due to completing the dragon's mission, the magical notes found in the lab had undergone a transformation. Lin recalled finding these notes on an experiment table during his first visit, remembering that the first page contained a section addressed from Oliver to Zoe. Now, what had originally been blank pages were filled with text. Lin recalls that he had asked the butler to send the small dragon, Uso, back to the farm for 𝐸𝐬 to take care of him. 𝐸𝐬 was trying to feed Uso and told him not to cry. Lin then immediately began studying the magic time inside the lab. It turns out that what his father and the others were doing wasn't to use the dragons to strengthen the demonic beasts. He saw a message left for a lover from Lin's father. He wonders about the forbidden experiments, what actually happened back then that made his father change his mind during the experiment, and what about the lover? Did he change his mind as well? Did he give up on the experiments, or did he choose to pursue the radical path, like using the dragon to change the physiques of the demonic beasts? As Lin pondered these questions, he accidentally bumped into an ink bottle and found that a hidden passage mechanism had been activated. Removing the ink bottle from the table revealed the mechanism and opened the passage. Lin pulled the ink bottle and discovered stairs leading downwards. He was surprised to see this, and as he headed in, he wondered where it would take him. Judging from the dust gathered on the lamps, he guessed that the dark hidden passage hadn't been used for a long time, just like the experiment lab. He ventured further inside and encountered a rock that marked the end of the path. He wondered if the passage had been sealed by someone at a later time. As he touched the rock, it shimmered, revealing another one of his father's teleportation devices. Passing through it, Lin entered an underground waterway and overheard someone discussing magical fluctuations. They mentioned a trespasser and ordered scavengers to apprehend them. By the time they arrived, however, Lin had already left, suspecting that someone was using the underwater routes for illicit activities. One man remarked that nobody was present, while another speculated that if anyone had been there, the voice they heard likely scared them off. He jokingly asked when the first boy would change his irritable temperament. Lin considered that the scavengers earlier bore similar black scales to the nightmare demon that had attacked the tower. Could they be connected? The situation remained unclear, and he realized he couldn't proceed with his investigation without proper planning. He remembered that there was a well leading up to the surface along the way. Seeing the stairs, he decided to climb up and see what lay above the waterways. He opened the gate at the top, and as he looked around, he wondered if he had emerged in a warehouse. Just then, some guards spotted him and shouted that there was a thief, ready to catch Lin. He quickly rushed back to the path from where he came, thinking how unlucky he was to encounter guards. As he was about to re-enter the passage, he found it sealed and realized he couldn't go back inside. Suddenly, Lucas appeared, furious about someone causing trouble in their mansion's chamber of commerce. Recognizing Lucas, Lin said that he wanted to sell Nicole for profit. He thought about how the Mason Chamber of Commerce was responsible for the dried-up well. Lucas also recognized Lin, who had previously opposed them regarding a certain gift. Lin warned Lucas to watch what he said about him. Just then, Vivi arrived and asked Lin what he was doing there, and if he was the one they were chasing earlier. Lucas agreed and said that Lin appeared out of nowhere inside their warehouse, and he was sure that Lin was up to no good. Lin realized that the Mason in Vivi's name referred to the Mason Chamber of Commerce. Vivi told Lucas that it was impossible, and that Lin wasn't a bad person. Lucas warned her not to be fooled by Lin's looks, and asked if she had any idea how many secrets their warehouse held. He stressed that if they released Lin, he might reveal those secrets to others. Vivi replied that she would take Lin to her elder sister. Lucas, noting that she had come to retrieve medical herbs for her practice, told her to hurry and not waste time. Vivi brought Lin to her elder sister, Alyssa. Alyssa said she would be honest and asked how he had emerged from beneath the dried-up well, which none of them had been able to enter. Lin explained that the well inside their warehouse was sealed, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Alyssa acknowledged this, and added that Lin could only exit the well from the darker passage underneath, which they were unable to access from above. Lin asked if she really expected him to believe what she was saying and suggested that the dark passage was created by the Chamber of Commerce to conduct their shady business. She responded, asking if that was just his imagination, noting that he had been very hostile towards their Chamber of Commerce from the beginning. She admitted that Lucas's actions the other day might have left Lin with a very bad impression, but explained that they had their grievances regarding that incident as well. She asserted that it was immoral for humans to trade others for their own pleasure, which is why they had always refused to take part. However, Lucas had grown up in the Chamber of Commerce and had strong feelings about its survival and success. Lucas had captured the elves in secret, hoping that everyone in the chamber could live a better life. Lin scoffed, asking what kind of better life Lucas was talking about. He thought the greedy face of Lucas wanted more than just a better life, and pointed out that the Chamber of Commerce was the largest in the whole kingdom. Why did they have to rely on trading elves for their livelihood? Alyssa replied that this brought them back to the secret passage and the well. It was not a pathway for them to conduct shady business, but rather it was the culprit that held the Mason Chamber of Commerce hostage. Since Lin was a friend of Vivi, he should have heard from her what happened years ago. They had set out with a large group, but only returned with one child. Her father had encountered a demonic beast, and the guards couldn't even break its immunity shield. When the rescue army arrived, she was the only survivor, hiding beneath a pile of dead bodies. The demonic beast that slaughtered the caravan had been modified by a powerful group seeking to punish and retaliate against her father after he refused to cooperate with them. In order to protect Vivi and ensure the safety of everyone at the Mason Chamber of Commerce, Alyssa, as the successor of her father's business, had no choice but to cooperate with the killers of her father. They were forced to provide these enemies with specialized medicinal herbs through the secret underground tunnel which was built for this purpose. Over the past few years, this arrangement had nearly emptied the entire Chamber of Commerce, leaving them teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Lin wondered who would have thought that the Mason Chamber of Commerce would find itself in such a dire situation, and that it was also related to the modified demonic beasts. Could it be that the entity controlling the Mason Chamber of Commerce was also the mastermind behind the attack on the Academy? Alyssa called out to Lin, snapping him out of his thoughts. He apologized for getting distracted and said he believed what she had told him earlier. He then asked if he could inquire about a potentially sensitive issue for her Chamber of Commerce. She asked what he wanted to know. He replied that he wanted to see the list of medicinal herbs that the powerful force behind them had instructed her to acquire. She agreed without any hesitation, which shocked Lin. She asked him to follow her, and as she showed him the list, he noted the presence of dragon scale grass, bay leaf, and allspice fruit. He realized that these medicinal herbs were almost identical to the ones his father used in the dragon blood potion experiments. This led him to suspect that the same person controlling the Mason Chamber of Commerce was also the one who conducted the dragon blood potion experiments. He wondered if Oliver was also involved in that. He pondered what had happened that year. Alyssa mentioned that she could see how much he cared about that, and asked if he also wanted to know who the mastermind was controlling them from the shadows. Lin agreed, and asked her to tell him more about them. She agreed and said that following her would cost some money. She asked if he wanted her to join forces with him to fight against the powerful force behind the scenes so that the Mason Chamber of Commerce could be free of their control. Lin assured her that they were already aware of the culprits behind the incident at Holy Iris Academy. He clenched his fist in anger, crushing the note he held in his hand. Alyssa was shocked to hear that those individuals had meddled with Holy Iris Academy. Alyssa expressed that the enemies of her enemies were her allies, asking Lin to trust her. She believed their cooperation would proceed smoothly and assured him she was secretly investigating their identities. Once she made any breakthroughs, she promised to notify him. Lin agreed to the deal, and they shook hands. He thought it made sense how easily she had allowed him to view their confidential documents. Did she intend to use that information as leverage to secure his cooperation all along? Alyssa considered it beneficial to have someone as talented and determined as Lin on their side, believing it could give the Chamber of Commerce a chance to survive. She hoped he would keep their conversation strictly confidential and not involve Vivi, as she wished to shield her from such matters for her own good. Lin responded that Vivi was his close friend, and he would do what was best for her. He thought even a shrewd businesswoman like Alyssa must have someone precious she wanted to protect. He returned home, pondering how many secrets Holy Iris Academy might be hiding. Nike and Jack were relieved to see Lin back safely. He apologized to them for causing worry. Shortly after, a knight arrived with an invitation for Lin from the Great Prince List. The knight explained that the prince had personally ordered him to deliver the invitation, emphasizing that it would be a great honor for Lin to attend the banquet at the prince's palace in 7 days. Prince List was not only the king's biological younger brother, but also his most trusted confidant throughout the entire kingdom. Lin expressed gratitude for the honor and instructed the knight to convey to Prince List that he would indeed attend the banquet as promised in 7 days. The knight thought to himself that the newly recognized nobleman was sharp and knew when to seize an opportunity. As the knight departed, Lin considered Prince List, the king's brother and a figure with enough influence to manipulate even the Mason Chamber of Commerce. The powerful royal family was now a suspect in Lin's mind, and he decided it would be best to meet the prince. Jack commented that Lin was awesome to receive an invitation from the prince. Nike voiced her concern, noting that Lin had risen to fame not long ago and was already receiving invitations from the prince. She worried that the prince might be scheming something. Nike mentioned that her village chief had warned her that humans with higher status often tended to be more evil. Lin reassured them not to think badly of the prince. He had come home to rest and promised to join them shortly for lunch, where he would share stories of the big monster he had fought. Nike agreed and told Lin to rest well, mentioning that she had learned a new recipe that day and he must try it. Agreeing, Lin headed to the ranch, wondering how 𝐸 was doing. When he arrived, 𝐸 called him over urgently. Lin worriedly asked if something had happened to 𝐸, but found that 𝐸 was merely sleeping peacefully. 𝐸 asked what Lin thought and admired how deeply asleep 𝐸 was, praising Lin for taking good care of him. Lin exclaimed, asking why 𝐸 was speaking so loudly upon seeing 𝐸 sleeping. 𝐸 reassured him not to worry, explaining that 𝐸 was sound asleep and wouldn't wake up even if 𝐸 accidentally made noise. Lin still insisted that 𝐸 should keep his voice down. Lin carefully lifted 𝐸 and reflected on how good it was that 𝐸 was sleeping peacefully. He hoped that 𝐸's dreams of his mother would ease the pain of losing her. Lin then asked the butler to allocate the multipurpose dragon's lair for 𝐸 to live in. The butler explained that the multipurpose dragon's lair was suitable for all types of dragons. Undeterred, Lin decided to spend an additional 10,000 gold to upgrade the nest directly to an intermediate level for 𝐸's comfort. 𝐸 was shocked by Lin's generosity and asked what Lin was doing. He remarked that he hadn't received such treatment when he was a baby. Lin replied that they had been poor back then, and besides, if the multipurpose dragon's lair was suitable for all types of dragons, it could also serve as a new nest for 𝐸. He saw it as equivalent to building another nest for 𝐸. 𝐸 agreed with Lin's reasoning. Lin thought that he was lucky to have managed to coax 𝐸, otherwise he would never hear the end of it. 𝐸 did struggle at first, but Lin knew he would have to make up for that in the future. Then they built the multipurpose dragon's lair, and 𝐸 was delighted with their new home. Lin moved in right away, and 𝐸 joined him, commenting that while it couldn't compare to his own fire dragon's nest, it still felt like a goodbye. Lin asked if 𝐸 wanted to go to the training ground that day. 𝐸 was excited to hear that Lin had free time and asked if they were going to fight those flaming lions again. Lin agreed, suggesting they might even complete the 6th training mission they had missed. 𝐸 agreed enthusiastically, promising to bite off the tails of all those flaming lions and turn them into a bunch of bald kitties. Lin chuckled and remarked that it wouldn't be 𝐸's tail that got bitten instead. Lin remembered how initially, the training ground only had missions similar to the Swinging Dragon teaser mission. They received a mission to unite forces and defeat the ferocious lions of their tier. Lin wondered who would have expected that the mission difficulties would increase with each new unlock, now encountering more challenging battle scenarios. He utilized the fire spring attack and reflected on how their skills and coordination had greatly improved over the week of training together. 𝐸, enraged, launched an attack on a lion. Lin commented sympathetically on 𝐸's struggle. They were praised by the farm owner for completing the 6th training mission, unlocking the 7th for them. Having reached the day's training limit, they were encouraged to return for more next time. Lin thought 𝐸 must really enjoy having him accompany her to the training ground every time, and noticed 𝐸 was reluctant to leave after each session. After defeating the lion, Lin felt extremely accomplished. Following the 6th training mission, he left the farm and enjoyed a long-awaited lunch with little Jackie and Nicole for the first time in a while. Over the meal, he regaled them with stories of the beasts he had conquered. While sitting in his room, Lin reminisced about his meeting with Alyssa. She revealed that in order to expose the mastermind behind their troubles, she hoped he could assist her with something first. Lin asked what she needed him to do. Alyssa mentioned hearing from Vivi that Lin had managed to create an energy potion from scratch in just a week, highlighting his genius in potion making. Lin jokingly asked if she intended to hire him as her personal potion maker. Alyssa clarified that making potions wouldn't help much. Instead, they needed to develop a new formula not yet available on the market. Curious about the new formula, Lin inquired further. Alyssa confirmed it was for a faster-acting potion. She acknowledged that developing such a potion would be challenging. Even seasoned potion makers might take months or years. But given their Chamber of Commerce's dire situation, they couldn't afford to wait. Alyssa believed Lin had a track record of exceeding expectations and creating miracles, making him their best hope. Only a high-grade, newly developed potion could generate enough buzz quickly and entice the mastermind to reveal themselves. He stopped reminiscing and thought about the plan. However, developing a new potion over such a short period seemed incredibly challenging for any normal human being. He decided to seek help and remembered 𝐸, the president of the Magic Potion Society. Lin arrived at the secluded area of the academy where the Magic Potion Society was located, surprised by its remote location. As he knocked on the door, there was a sudden blast that destroyed it. Lin quickly shielded himself and wondered what was happening inside. Students emerged from the room, and a girl told 𝐸 that he had warned him about not adding a certain ingredient to the potion, which caused the explosion. They discussed the importance of testing new ingredients courageously, despite the risks. 𝐸 reassured everyone that such incidents were part of the learning process. Lin remarked on 𝐸's resilience. They both sat down, and 𝐸 explained that such mishaps were a minor consequence in the pursuit of new potion research. Lin asked if 𝐸 was currently researching new potions. 𝐸 confirmed and mentioned they were nearing success after the final step, though progress hadn't been smooth lately. Lin thought it was understandable, and asked if 𝐸 would be interested in partnering with him on developing new potions. 𝐸 agreed enthusiastically, acknowledging Lin's exceptional abilities. He believed his assistance would greatly facilitate their research. Lin proposed a condition. If they successfully developed a new potion, he requested that 𝐸 withhold the formula from the academy, and instead allow the Mason Chamber of Commerce to announce the product. 𝐸 was taken aback, knowing that sharing academy research with a commerce chamber was strictly forbidden. He cautioned Lin about the severe consequences, potential expulsion, and legal issues, if academy research results were leaked for profit. 𝐸 then asked if Lin had encountered financial difficulties recently. Lin denied any financial motive, emphasizing that his goal was to use the newly developed potion to uncover the truth behind a tragic incident. 𝐸 asked if Lin meant the murder of the 72 academy students, and whether he had any leads. Lin admitted he had heard there were no leads, prompting 𝐸 to suggest they inform the professors immediately. As 𝐸 began to lead Lin away, he grabbed her hand and asked if she would believe him if he said a professor from the academy was responsible. 𝐸 was shocked by the accusation. Lin considered the possibility that Oliver's connections to those who modified the demonic beast might implicate academy professors. He speculated that the appearance of the modified nightmare demon in the trial tower could only have happened with inside help, though these were just his thoughts. 𝐸 urged him not to joke and insisted no professor would commit such an act. Lin remained serious, and 𝐸, understanding his sincerity, remarked that if anyone else had made such a claim, she would dismiss it as madness. But she trusted Lin. She agreed that if they succeeded in developing a few potions, they would be Lin's. As they shook hands, Lin noticed how soft 𝐸's hands were. Lin apologized to 𝐸 for bringing up such a serious matter. They began their potion-making process, and Lin pondered how 𝐸 had secretly moved all the experimental materials to an abandoned basement to avoid implicating the club. Jack and Nicole noticed this, and wondered why Lin was spending the whole day with 𝐸. Jack jokingly remarked that 𝐸 was a boy, not a girl. Lin considered the potion 𝐸 was working on, a blend of water and fire elements. He imagined the countless failed experiments 𝐸 must have endured to integrate such incompatible elements. Suddenly, there was a blast, and 𝐸 exclaimed that they hadn't gotten it quite right. Lin questioned why 𝐸 had chosen such volatile elements for the potion, knowing they exploded upon impact. 𝐸 explained that he selected them for their volatility, but now they needed to find ways to reduce their purity to stabilize them within a single bottle. 𝐸 asked if Lin was suggesting they keep the water and fire elements separate in 2 bottles, and combine them during battle to reduce the explosive effect, which he had heard before. Lin agreed and added that they would also need to blend the portions using another flower. Lin asked if they could contain both elements separately within the same bottle, suggesting a flask shaped like an hourglass with compartments for each element on either side and something in the middle to stabilize them. He proposed using a pin as a trigger. Once pulled, it would allow the elements to mix and create a controlled reaction. 𝐸 thought it was a brilliant idea, noting that potion masters usually focused on modifying formulas rather than flask designs. Lin asked if this was common practice, and suggested modifying the water element to delay the explosion, ensuring user safety. 𝐸 complimented Lin's genius. Lin showed Alyssa the newly developed potion, composed solely of the simplest ingredients, water and fire elements, yet its explosive power rivaled that of a Tier 5 magic spell. It was inexpensive to produce and highly effective. Alyssa took it in her hand, and confidently remarked that it would surely sell well. Lin reminded her that selling potions wasn't their primary goal. Alyssa assured him to leave that to her. The scene shifted to a house where Lucas presented the newly developed potion, now officially on sale by the Mason Chamber of Commerce. People gathered around excitedly as Lucas explained that its explosive power could rival Tier 5 magic, demonstrating by cracking a black iron stone with its undeniable force. A man noted its competitive price and decided to purchase one. Many others placed orders for multiple bottles. Lucas noticed a peculiar man in the distance and thought about his reservations regarding Alyssa's risky maneuvers at the time. Lin thought that before the powerful group made any move, List's carriage arrived to pick her up, inviting Lin to follow. Upon meeting List, he mentioned that he had heard many great things about Lin. Lin commented that List was exceptionally kind. List responded that there was no need for modesty. Lin had achieved what Augustine had failed to do inside the magic trial tower, making Lin more deserving of the title of prodigy than anyone else. He expressed his fondness for meeting talented individuals and immediately instructed his guards to extend an invitation to Lin after hearing her story, hoping she wouldn't mind the suddenness of the invitation. Lin asked why she would mind, expressing her honor at being invited by the prince himself. List replied that he was glad and, to make up for the hasty invitation, had prepared a small gift for her before their afternoon banquet. He pointed to a treasure box and asked Lin to open it, hoping she would like what was inside. As Lin opened it, List mentioned that he had put great effort into obtaining the gift, believing that no fire attribute magician would be displeased to receive it. Lin looked at them and wondered, weren't these the intermediate-level potions he used to sell at the market to help 𝐸𝐬 upgrade her nest? List asked what was the matter, and if they were not to Lin's liking. Lin denied this, and asked how could he possibly dislike a gift from the prince. List replied that he was glad to hear that, indicating his efforts were not in vain. He had managed to produce only 6 of those potions, each costing 60,000 gold coins. Lin was shocked to hear such a high price, recalling that he had sold only 15 bottles for 20,000 gold coins each at that time. Realizing the significant price increase, List asked if Lin thought those potions were overpriced, but assured him that for Lin, they were worth every penny. He explained that the effects of those potions were far more powerful than any other intermediate-level energy potion, especially benefiting fire attribute magicians by greatly improving meditation efficiency and enhancing their affinity with the fire element. List had heard that Lin was also a potion expert, suggesting that such a gift should be more enticing than any ordinary high-level potions. Lin thanked him for the gift and suggested that List should just give him the 60,000 gold directly. List expressed satisfaction that Lin was pleased with it. Changing the subject, he mentioned hearing that Lin had recently joined the Academy's Magic Potion Society and was currently involved in researching a new potion. Lin acknowledged that List seemed well informed. List continued, noting that he also knew about the Mason Chamber of Commerce's recent release of a popular new potion that closely resembled the topic of Lin's research. Lin wondered how List had learned about the newly developed potion, as only 𝐸𝐬 and the internal staff of the Mason Chamber of Commerce were aware of its transaction. Lin speculated whether the mastermind behind the Chamber of Commerce was somehow connected to List, suggesting List should put on a show for him if that were the case. Lin slammed the table and demanded to know what List meant by this accusation. Was List suspecting him of taking the Academy's research results to the Chamber of Commerce for personal gain? Lin emphasized that such actions would violate the Academy's rules, stating firmly that he would never do such a thing. List replied that he wasn't suggesting anything like that. While he acknowledged Lin's genius, he also noted Lin's youth and inexperience. List cautioned that those with more shortcomings are often easier to manipulate for personal gain. He advised Lin not to panic, posing the hypothetical scenario that if Lin did indeed strike a deal with the Chamber of Commerce based on his own research, it was within his right to decide how to utilize it. Lin pointed out that the research funding had been provided by the Academy. List asked if Lin was troubled by financial difficulties, offering to fund Lin's research. In return, any future research results would no longer belong to the Academy, thus eliminating risks for both parties. List suggested a 50-50 profit split once they began receiving returns from their product. Lin found the offer attractive but explained that he needed to concentrate on the Magic Potion Society for now to earn the credits necessary for his studies. List understood the difficulty in recruiting talented individuals and reaffirmed his promise to Lin. Then List suggested they could discuss their cooperation later, noting that Lin must be famished after such a long conversation. Lin replied that he was indeed a bit hungry. List asked him to take a seat. Lin thought that despite the luxurious afternoon banquet prepared by the prince and their amicable conversation, he couldn't shake the feeling of being eyed like prey by the prince. Despite this, Lin left the gathering and told them there was no need to trouble themselves to send him back. However, one of List's attendants insisted that Lin was an esteemed guest and escorted him to the carriage. As Lin departed, he wondered if List could be the mastermind behind everything, and if the kindness shown to him was all a pretense. Lin concluded that the afternoon banquet hadn't been as enjoyable as he had hoped. On his way back from the market, Lin spotted Lucas and wondered how he should handle the situation, feeling reluctant to entertain him. Suddenly, Lucas began chasing him with a bag. Lin wondered what Lucas wanted, and if he was there to give him money. Lucas asked the carriage to stop, mentioning that he had some business to attend to. Lin replied that there was no need to trouble himself and he would get off there. He instructed Lucas to return to his previous location. Lucas then showed him a bag, explaining that it contained Lin's share from the sales. Inside was a substantial sum, 300,000 gold coins. Lin was stunned by the amount. Lucas attributed their success to the high-quality potion developed by Lin, which had sold out completely. Lin, dismissing the flattery, reminded Lucas that he had come to the market and stopped him in the middle of the street just to receive his share of the money. Lucas, looking around cautiously, denied involvement and leaned in closer to Lin, explaining that the president had instructed him to deliver that message. He revealed that the powerful group, upon learning of their profits, had initiated action. Previously, they had only ordered deliveries every 2 months, but suddenly requested an earlier shipment date, attempting to deplete their resources and exploit their potion earnings. Lin asked when the next delivery date would be. Lucas replied that it was the next day. Lin thought it would be enough time to make preparations. He then instructed Lucas to inform Alyssa that he wanted to smuggle along with the transported goods through the underground hidden passage and to prepare accordingly. Lucas agreed. The next day, at the location where goods were being transported through a magic circle, Lucas wondered why Lin and Alyssa hadn't arrived yet. A man informed Lucas that their Chamber of Commerce had finally turned a profit. Lucas used to delay the delivery date whenever they requested, but this time they asked in advance, with only 2 medicinal ingredients missing. He assured them they would compensate double next time. Lucas agreed and pledged to provide their best service. Another man reported that all the medicinal goods had been transported and they could now deactivate the portal. Lucas worried it might be too late if Alyssa didn't arrive soon. Suddenly, Alyssa appeared and requested them to wait, as she had brought the remaining medicinal ingredients. A man explained how she managed to enter despite the circumstances. She apologized, explaining it was delivered by the caravan. Lin, standing nearby, suddenly vanished as she slipped through the portal with the box. She admitted it was a mistake and apologized. The man expressed frustration at the trouble caused and told her to leave. As Lin entered, he realized his expensive invisibility potion and the light detector on the stone door would still reveal any entity passing through. Alyssa had intentionally waited until the last moment to cover his entrance, ensuring no suspicion arose, and his plan succeeded. The man instructed another to proceed, and they headed towards the alchemist. Walking through the underground passage, they were accompanied by a lurking monster. One man asked Rick how he returned so quickly. Rick replied that he had no choice. The higher-ups demanded the goods be delivered promptly. Lin spotted the monster and wondered if it was the same one from their previous encounter, noticing it had somehow grown. Suddenly, the monster looked directly at Lin, though he was invisible. Lin decided not to reveal that it had sensed him and was tracking his movements. A man remarked that it wasn't their usual patrol route. Lin pondered whether the scavenger's senses were truly that strong, still able to detect his presence despite his invisibility potion. Worried it would soon discover him, he unleashed the power of Dragon's Might, stunning the scavenger. Lin hurried to put distance between them. Passing by the 2 men, he sensed a fluctuation of draconic magic. One of them asked how such danger could be present in a place like this. Lin suggested it might be from the scavenger. Even after numerous modifications, it remained unstable. He pointed out that the scavenger seemed to be spacing out. Another man urged everyone to move quickly as the alchemists were waiting for them. Lin wondered if this could be the location of their secret lab. He noticed Toman number 2 written on the side wall and questioned why it was there, speculating if there were multiple experimental labs. Determined to investigate further, he followed a man who led him to where another man was speaking to a professor about completing backup data for Time 261 on the Dragon Blood Potion. Lin wondered what this was about, and if they were continuing Oliver's research. The professor suggested archiving it along with file number 4 on the backup data for the intermediate energy points in the data room, and retrieving file 25 for another look at the results of the Dragon Blood Potion. Lin realized the posting was made by him previously, concerned not just about the price, but also how these people had obtained as well. He decided to follow the man to the data room for more information. In the data room, Lin read in a book that the 13th experiment confirmed the 12 bottles of special intermediate energy potions circulated in the black market did indeed contain dragon saliva, likely from purebred dragons, unlike their experimental ones. Finding these purebred dragons could greatly advance their research on the Dragon Blood Potion, which had already consumed significant financial resources in tracing its origins. Many merchants claimed the product as theirs, yet they had not found a matching consistency. Lin was grateful that many people had come forward to claim his work and that he had stopped producing more after those 15 bottles. However, that wasn't the most critical issue. According to the experiment logs, in addition to the 3 bottles of potion that had been used, significant efforts were made to acquire the remaining 12 unused bottles. How did List manage to have 6 of those potions at the banquet the previous day? If those 6 potions were indeed taken from there, List would be the master of the experimental laboratory, the mastermind controlling the Mason Chamber of Commerce, and the culprit behind the tragedy of the trial tower. List was a powerful and trusted person by the king. Lin wondered what to do and considered if he wanted to expose a prince. The potions were being used as evidence to confirm the prince's involvement in the crime, and Lin needed to find other evidence since he couldn't reveal his connection to those 6 potions. He wondered if he could find more concrete evidence there. Lin saw the professor and the man emerge from inside. The man told the professor that he must be tired after the inspection and thanked him for visiting. He asked the professor to convey kind words to their master. Lin wondered if 𝐸𝐚𝐽, the king's liaison, might provide him with evidence. The professor reassured the man not to worry, as their master knew of his hard work and would reward him accordingly. The man thanked him and left. As they passed by Lin, he noticed 𝐸𝐚𝐽, the professor, was a Tier 7 magician, higher than Professor Yisha. 𝐸𝐚𝐽 sensed something and suddenly attacked Lin with a fire hammer. 𝐸𝐚𝐽 questioned if Lin thought he could remain undetected using invisibility potion, then noticed a shield attached to the wall. Lin realized he had to flee. He was no match for a Tier 7 magician. As he ran, 𝐸𝐚𝐽 anticipated his escape and launched a chain fireball attack towards Lin. Lin used his shield to block the attack but was thrown back against the wall. He realized the magical gap between them was immense. 𝐸 chanted a spell, calling upon the fire spirits to gather and form an indestructible fiery warrior to crush all in its path. A massive knight materialized and charged towards Lin with incredible speed and power. Lin recognized it as Vasu's work. Not only was the warrior formidable, but its attacks were devastating. Lin attempted to flee once more. 𝐸 taunted Lin to see how long he could evade the attacks. Lin resolved not to be underestimated, knowing he couldn't defeat Tier 7 magic but refusing to be easily defeated by a summoned entity. He focused his draconic magic, launching a crushing blow against the summoned knight. Lin thanked his dragons for creating an opening and threw a newly designed bomb towards 𝐸 and the knight, causing a powerful explosion. In the chaos, they discovered the laboratory and precious experiment data. 𝐸 declared he would capture the invader himself. Lin ran with 𝐸, knowing that despite not being able to see clearly behind him, he could sense a powerful magical presence closely pursuing them. He hoped his father's teleportation device might help them escape the Tier 7 magician's pursuit and magical senses. Suddenly, he encountered a magic circle. 𝐸 asked what it was. Lin tried to pass through it, but found himself unable to, wondering why it wasn't working. Then he saw that 𝐸 arrived by flying, and said that he had finally caught Lin. But then he realized that Lin had escaped through the teleportation array. Lin and 𝐸 found themselves in a dark place, wondering what was going on. The dimension looked exactly the same as the one he had entered when he activated the dragon farm for the first time, so the teleportation device had worked after all. But why had they been teleported to this dimension instead? 𝐸 mentioned that there seemed to be something ahead, summoning them. Lin wondered what it could be. 𝐸 said he could feel an ominous and dangerous aura. Lin said that as 𝐸 approached, he started to feel something. Then they saw a giant dragon in front of them. The dragon attacked them with fire. Lin created a shield and said there was no time to evade the attack. 𝐸 used himself to take the fire, saving Lin. Lin was surprised to see that the dragon's breath went through them without causing any harm. Could it be because of an illusion? Just then, he was welcomed by someone, and upon hearing that voice, Lin realized it was his father's. He asked where his father was and what was going on in the secret experiment lab. He also inquired if his father was really behind the experiment with the sleeping dragon. Lin had been looking for his father for a very long time, so he asked again how his father was. His father replied that there wasn't much time and that he would keep the message short. Lin noticed that his father didn't respond to his questions, making him wonder if it was a recording. His father told him that since Lin had managed to reach there, it meant he had found his own dragon partner. With limited time, he explained briefly. Lin discovered that the reason the red beam was blinking was because of 𝐸, and it seemed he could only enter the dimension when he was with 𝐸. His father spoke about the ancient dragon and asked if it didn't look strong and mighty. Lin commented that he was indeed scared to death. 𝐸, growing angry, wondered if the voice was mocking them. His father told him that he was entrusting 2 formulas to Lin, asking him to use them wisely. He assured Lin that with these formulas and his dragon partner, he would become as strong as the dragon they had encountered earlier. Lin wondered if his father was referring to the phantom dragon from before. 𝐸 was happy at the prospect of becoming as strong and mighty as that dragon. His father continued, explaining that the dimension would self-destruct once they had obtained the formulas, and they would be teleported back to the real world. He wished Lin the best, and added that he would be waiting for him on the eastern side of the rift. The voice began to fade, and Lin asked it to wait, but it did not. He reminded himself that it was only a recording, not his actual father, and he vowed to work harder to become even stronger and to meet him at the eastern side of the rift. There was a place for Lin and 𝐸 to place their hands. 𝐸 placed his hand and asked Lin to have a look, expressing his eagerness to become as strong as the dragon they had seen earlier. Lin agreed, confident that they would become as strong as that dragon one day. He placed his hand as well. A screen appeared, announcing that the Dragon Blood Potion formula and the Ancient Dragon Awakening Potion formula had been detected and were now being transcribed into his magical tome. Lin pondered the Dragon Blood Potion, wondering if it was the same potion that the prince was currently researching at the secret experiment lab. They had already experimented with it 261 times without success. Had his father already completed that research before? The Ancient Dragon Awakening Potion, on the other hand, could help 𝐸 awaken his ancient bloodline, but it needed to be used rationally. Otherwise, 𝐸 might turn into an undead dragon. 𝐸 wondered what undead meant. Then the screen appeared again, detailing the main mission of the water dragon, to produce a Dragon Blood Potion and an Ancient Dragon Awakening Potion. The requirements to complete the mission were to create both potions. The rewards included 1 water dragon egg fragment for each potion, and 30 experience points each. Lin commented that the mission announcements from the butler always appeared at the perfect time. He admitted that he was very interested in both potions, and then told 𝐸 that they should go home immediately to produce the potions and test their effects. 𝐸 agreed and suggested they head back. However, Lin asked him to wait, noting that they still didn't know where they would end up after being teleported out. He suggested that 𝐸 should return to the farm and wait there. Lin then transferred to the library of the academy, thinking it was a good decision for 𝐸 to return to the farm. Lin decided to go back to his academy residence first to study the formulas. The scene shifted to the entrance of the Holy Iris Academy, where List was standing with some guards. A guard bowed to List and said they had no idea List was planning to grace them with his presence. He asked for permission to immediately inform the professor in charge of List's arrival and requested that List wait there for a while. List replied that there was no need to trouble themselves, as he was just there to visit an acquaintance. As List turned to leave, one guard mentioned to the second that List was very friendly to his subjects and did not have the usual arrogant demeanor of other royals. The second guard agreed, noting that List could have easily summoned whoever he wished to see instead of coming himself. List then recalled his meeting with 𝐸𝐚𝐻. 𝐸𝐚𝐻 had informed him that none of the important information from the experiment lab was missing, but the intruder had managed to escape through a teleportation device. 𝐸𝐚𝐻 admitted it was his mistake and was ready to accept any punishment. List replied that anyone who could escape from 𝐸𝐚𝐻 was not an ordinary person and asked if it could be someone from the Illumination Court. 𝐸𝐚𝐻 stated that he presumed so, as they were the only ones who knew about the secret experiment lab and their cover, but he had no evidence to prove it was their doing. 𝐸𝐚𝐻 continued, explaining that the intruder had used a large amount of Wrath of Ice and Fire potions, which had suddenly become popular in just 2 days. They had been monitoring the people at the Mason Chamber of Commerce, but there was nothing unusual in the records of potion buyers. However, when it came to those who produced the potions, it was a different story. List asked if 𝐸𝐚𝐻 was implying that Lin might be involved with the Illumination Court. 𝐸𝐚𝐻 agreed with this suspicion. List stopped reminiscing and thought that Lin better not be involved with the Illumination Court. Just then, List unexpectedly encountered Lin and was shocked to see him. List said that he was about to pay Lin a visit and didn't expect Lin to be coming back from outside. He wondered if Lin had noticed the expression he had earlier. Lin commented that List was very kind and could always summon him anytime he wanted to see him, instead of coming there in person. Lin also wondered why Prince List had come suddenly and hoped he wasn't starting to suspect him. List noticed Lin's attire and commented on it, asking what it was. Lin was taken aback and thought that he hadn't had a chance to change his clothes. He explained that the protective garment was borrowed from Alyssa, and the invisibility power had already worn off. Lin explained that the garment had been lent to him by the president of the Magic Association. They had been researching new potions together, and recently their developments had been rather volatile and prone to easy explosions, hence the need for protective clothing. Liz sensed something was amiss as Lin's eyes seemed worried for a moment. He found it interesting and remarked that he should also visit the Academy's Potion Society to see for himself the talents behind these new potions. Lin was shocked to hear that List wanted to visit there. List asked what was the matter and why Lin seemed reluctant to welcome him there. Lin thought to himself that his reaction was quite obvious. Then Lin said that he was just a bit flustered, and that if List wanted to visit, it would be an honor that no other society within the Academy had ever received. He mentioned that he was just about to retrieve some documents for the society and asked List to wait there for a while. Lin assured him that once he gathered the documents, he would lead the way to him. List agreed to wait. Inside his house, Lin realized he needed to come up with a solution quickly. No matter what, he couldn't afford to be caught red-handed. List ordered his knights to surround the building and ensure that no one except Lin could leave, including any form of magical communication. The guards agreed and carried out the order. After a while, Lin emerged from the house with the documents and apologized to List for keeping him waiting. List reassured him not to worry, and asked if those were the documents he needed for his new potion. Lin confirmed, and List took the documents from him to see what interesting things Lin was currently working on. Lin didn't have to be suspicious. List assured him that he would never steal Lin's research results and asked him to show the way. Lin agreed, and as they walked, List noticed mention of the miasma potion in the documents. He asked Lin to explain the key points of his current potion research. Lin explained that they were currently using the Polytigia lungfish, found in the swamp, as one of the main ingredients for the miasma potion. List thought to himself that his guards had been stationed outside the building the whole time, ensuring Lin had no chance to communicate with anyone from the society. List needed to familiarize himself with the research contents to prevent Lin from deceiving him once they arrived at the Potion Society. Soon after they arrived, and Lin mentioned that he had spoken of this earlier. They then met 𝐸𝐻, the president of the society. List pondered on who would have thought 𝐸𝐻 was a member of the Magic Potion Society. If Lin was already allied with 𝐸𝐻, it would pose a far greater threat to List than Lin being a part of the Illumination Court. List told 𝐸𝐻 that it had been a long time since they last met and discussed how much they had both grown. List admitted feeling envious that 𝐸𝐻 had managed to recruit a talent like Lin under his command. 𝐸𝐻 replied that Lin was only his friend. Lin asked if they both knew each other. List thought that Lin's question implied that he didn't know 𝐸𝐻's true identity. List couldn't believe that 𝐸𝐻 hadn't used his status to lure Lin into joining him. List mentioned that 𝐸𝐻 was a genius alchemist like Lin, wondering why he hadn't known 𝐸𝐻 earlier. List expressed a desire to visit their experiments and ask them both some questions. Recently, his manor outside the city had been attacked, resulting in valuable items being stolen and injuries to his staff. Coincidentally, the robbers had used the same potion that Lin and 𝐸𝐻 had recently developed. Lin wondered if the manor List mentioned had a hidden underground experimental lab, and if so, those robbers must have been after it. List stated that he was certain neither of them had participated in the robbery. Lin understood that List was vouching for them. List mentioned that he wanted to review the buyer list for the potion to search for any clues. Lin apologized and expressed regret that the potion they had developed had caused trouble for List. They offered their help, but reminded List of their academy's strict rules. They couldn't sell their potions to parties outside the Mason Chamber of Commerce. Dia was shocked, and Lin wondered if they had inadvertently revealed their research. List grabbed Lin's collar and demanded to know how they dared to leak the information, warning of possible expulsion if anything went wrong. Lin insisted they weren't the ones who leaked it, suggesting List was too quick to jump to conclusions. List wondered if Dia's anger was genuine or a performance, questioning if Lin's ongoing potion research claims were fake. List then assured them both that he didn't intend to cause trouble and acknowledged that the Academy's rules could be overly rigid. He offered assistance or research funds in the future, inviting them to collaborate with him. List gave an example of the new potion that the two of them were currently developing. Lin asked him to wait, but Dia insisted they couldn't transfer ownership of the newly developed potion to List. List requested permission to visit their experimental bench. Upon opening the door, he discovered that they were indeed researching the miasma potion, with the Polotiga lungfish mentioned as a main ingredient, confirming the existence of their new potion research. Lin apologized again, explaining they couldn't transfer ownership of that potion since they had already sold the Wrath of Ice and Fire potion to the Mason Chamber of Commerce. They needed to develop another new potion quickly to fulfill the Academy's research requirements. Dia agreed, adding that they couldn't guarantee the success of the experiments, and had prepared extra ingredients just in case the Academy came for an inspection. List remarked that it seemed they both were working hard, deciding not to disturb them further. He offered his assistance if they encountered any difficulties, and they thanked him for that. After they left, List departed as well. Lin thought they had managed to handle the situation smoothly and thanked Dia for his help. Dia asked for an explanation about what had happened, particularly about the clone of Lin that had appeared. He insisted that Lin not attribute it to using a shape-shifting potion, as his clothing certainly shouldn't have sprouted a tail. Lin wondered why the clothing had revealed its tail and recalled that, due to Uso's tendency to sleep often, he had asked the system's butler to alert him when Uso woke up. During the growth period, Uso had reached Tier 2 and acquired skills like hypnosis, bewitchment, and shape-shifting. Facing an urgent situation, Lin had used Uso to create a clone and instructed the system's butler to teleport it to the Potion Society, notifying Dia in advance. Lin marveled at the unexpected revelation of the clone. Dia said to Lin that he should know how much Dia trusts him, whether it's regarding the Wrath of Ice and Fire potion, or concealing certain information from List. Dia expressed feeling like Lin didn't trust him as much as he trusted Lin. Lin replied that it wasn't true and apologized, explaining that humans have always seen dragons as mortal enemies, either killing them or exploiting them for their own gain. Lin couldn't reveal the dragons he possessed to protect Uso and others. Suddenly, Uso, feeling sleepy, transformed back into his dragon kid form and curled up to sleep. Dia was shocked to see the dragon there. Lin was equally surprised that Uso had revealed himself to Dia and wondered what to do. Dia gently took Uso, finding him adorable and far different from the rumors spread about dragons. Lin wondered what was happening and asked Dia if he wasn't afraid of dragons. Dia responded that it was humans who feared dragons, seeing them as enemies. While most people held this view, Dia respected someone who saw dragons differently. Dia recounted that his mentor was a traveling scholar who devoted her life to the pursuit of knowledge. Once, during an inspection near the east of the Rift Valley, they fell off a cliff and encountered an injured white dragon at the bottom. Initially, she approached the dragon with the intent of studying it, but unexpectedly formed a deep bond of friendship with it. This bond continued until the dragon was killed by magicians who had come to rescue her. Dia questioned whether dragons were truly the catastrophes that would bring calamity to the world. To uncover the truth, his mentor began traveling the world, studying legends and historical materials about dragons in various places. However, the day before she was to reveal her research results at the Library of the Eternal City, she died under mysterious circumstances. Many speculated that it was divine punishment for befriending the dragon, reinforcing the belief that dragons were disasters that needed to be eradicated as mortal enemies of humanity. Dia stopped reminiscing and stated that after seeing the small dragon, he was now convinced that his mentor's death wasn't an accident, but rather a conspiracy to conceal the truth about dragons. He reassured Lin that if the small dragon was the reason Lin had been hiding things from him, Lin had nothing to fear. Dia wouldn't do anything harsh. He returned Uso to Lin, urging him to trust Dia more. Lin apologized, admitting he hadn't expected anyone in the world to harbor no hatred towards dragons. He confessed to hiding many things from Dia, but promised to reveal everything about List and Uso. Over the next 2 hours, Lin explained in detail how he rescued Uso from being sealed inside the Nightmare Demon's bidet and investigated the underground experiment. Lin finished explaining everything and asked Dia if, after hearing it all, he also suspected that Prince List was behind the tragedy at the trial tower. Dia was incredulous, questioning how it could be possible since the prince and the king shared a strong brotherly bond, having the same mother. He emphasized that the prince valued cultivating talented individuals and many exceptional students had perished in the trial tower incident. Why would he orchestrate such harm to the kingdom? Pondered whether he should report Lin's suspicions to the king, but hesitated, considering the potential impact on the king's relationship with his brother if Lin's accusations were unfounded. Dia wondered what the right course of action should be. It seems like there's a complex web of suspicions and contradictions surrounding List, Dia, and the events involving Lin and Uso. Lin is questioning why Dia is reluctant to believe him, and wonders if there could be some connection between Dia and List that influences Dia's perspective. Dia asks Lin to wait and points out a significant contradiction in Lin's reasoning. He brings up 𝐸, noting that Lin had said 𝐸 was sealed within the body of the nightmare demon. However, the archives in the underground lab indicate they didn't have access to real dragons. If Prince List orchestrated the Trial Tower incident, wouldn't that be contradictory to 𝐸's presence as a real dragon? Lin realizes Dia's point and admits he had been so focused on identifying the lab's owner through the potion they concocted that he overlooked this detail. He acknowledges that the modifications conducted in the underground lab closely mirror what happened to the nightmare demon. He asks how they can explain this discrepancy. Both Lin and Dia contemplate whether there are overlooked details that could shed light on the situation. Lin continued, expressing regret over not finding more clues during his previous infiltration of List's lab. He worried that List would now be more vigilant about security, making further investigation harder. However, he had an idea. Since 𝐸, as a close aide to List, likely knew many secrets about List and the monster modifications, they could kidnap 𝐸 to extract more information. Dia questioned whether they could handle 𝐸, who was a Tier 7 magician. Lin reassured him, saying they would find their chance. He pointed out that as long as the Mason Chamber of Commerce continued to supply medicinal materials to the hidden lab, they could trace them back and maintain the upper hand. Dia agreed, feeling optimistic about their chances of success. Dia believed they needed to uncover the truth, especially if List was indeed the mastermind. He resolved to inform the king as soon as possible. The scene shifts to List's office, where he is seated in front of 𝐸. 𝐸 asks if he managed to gather information from Lin's side. List replies that everything seems fine, but he still feels they are hiding something. 𝐸 asks if List thinks they are related to the Illumination Court. List denies it and says that after all, Lin is partnering with Dia, so it's doubtful they will ally with a foreign force from outside the kingdom. However, he still feels a bit uneasy. 𝐸 states that a genius prodigy like Lin, who suddenly emerged from nowhere, surely possesses many secrets of his own. He also mentions that there might be things List cannot do due to his status, but he is certain that the Dark Court might be of assistance. List agrees and asks how he could have forgotten about their old friend, the Dark Court, master of the Fake Kingdom. Yeah, the Dragon Blood Potions research was their special offering to him in exchange for his cooperation, and he had helped them conceal their huge forces in the kingdom. There was no one more suitable than them to do things quietly in the dark, and List was sure they wouldn't mind helping him with a small favor. The scene shifts back to Dia and Lin's research lab. Lin sneezes, and Dia asks if he is okay. Lin agrees and mentions that he has a feeling someone is watching him closely, giving him chills every time he thinks about it. He reflects on how Dia and he have been spending most of their time in the experiment lab. To avoid raising any more suspicion from List, they decided to present the somewhat disgusting Maesna potion as their new research topic. Additionally, they urgently need to submit their research results to the Academy soon. Otherwise, they won't accumulate enough credits for school. Lin also needs to find time to produce the Dragon Blood Potion, but his progress hasn't been as smooth as he expected. One of the ingredients in the ancient Dragon Blood Potion formula requires a blending potion, but the records about this blending potion in the Book of Potions are so controversial that he can only keep experimenting with it one by one. He heads to his ranch and asks 𝐸 to try the potion he brought. As 𝐸 drinks the whole potion, he feels different and tells Lin not to say he did it on purpose. Lin thinks that as a result, 𝐸's enthusiasm for becoming stronger continues to wane. After a few days, 𝐸 is hiding behind a rock. Lin comes over and reassures him, saying not to be afraid. He mentions he has studied many potion books and asks 𝐸 to drink the new potion, assuring him it will work. 𝐸 reluctantly agrees, pointing out that Lin has said this several times before. After drinking, 𝐸 asks where the Dragon Blood Potion is. That marks their success in producing the Dragon Blood Potion, and Lin receives the rewards for it. Lin comments that he is very interested in both potions and suggests they go home immediately to produce and test them. 𝐸 agrees but asks why Lin didn't work on the other potion first and why he has to suffer. Lin asks him to calm down, explaining that it wasn't because he didn't want to share the joy and sorrows with 𝐸, but simply because the Dragon Blood Potion couldn't be produced until now. According to the magic tome, the potion requires the blood of a dragon whose ancient bloodline has been awakened. Therefore 𝐸 will have to undergo that process first. 𝐸 seems sad, and then Lin says that if 𝐸 doesn't feel like drinking it, they can put it aside for now. 𝐸 agrees but then says he'll just drink it anyway, asking what the worst that could happen is. Maybe turning into something weird. He drinks the potion quickly, commenting that it tastes a bit different from the last one. When nothing happens, he asks Lin if it worked. Lin replies that he is afraid not, and explains that the likelihood of failure is higher if there is no immediate reaction. Just then, 𝐸 says he is starting to feel something. He begins to levitate, and the surroundings turn a royal red. Lin wonders if the potion is really working. He realizes that 𝐸's ancient dragon bloodline is about to awaken. However, a large amount of fire attribute magic is lacking for the awakening, and 𝐸's health is rapidly declining. 𝐸's health points drop to 80 out of 100, and Lin is urged to take action. Lin was surprised to hear that the fire attribute magic wasn't sufficient. He quickly used his own fire magic to aid 𝐸, regretting that he didn't know earlier that more fire attribute magic was needed. Otherwise, he would have prepared magic-enhancing potions. Despite Lin's additional magic power, it still wasn't enough. 𝐸𝐬's health points continued to decrease, reaching 61. Lin urged 𝐸𝐬 to hold on and suggested they return to his dragon nest. 𝐸𝐬 agreed, and they hurried there. At the nest, Lin mentioned that the ancient Devon awakening potion could potentially help 𝐸𝐬 awaken his ancient bloodline, but it needed to be used wisely to avoid 𝐸𝐬 turning into an undead dragon. Lin worried that this might already be happening due to the insufficient fire attribute magic. Looking around the nest, Lin couldn't immediately spot 𝐸𝐬 and saw his health points drop to 29. He anxiously asked if 𝐸𝐬 was alright. 𝐸𝐬 replied that he was feeling slightly better than before, but still in pain. Lin commented that it was a relief to see 𝐸𝐬's health points slowly regenerating, even though he couldn't see him. He noticed a change in the surrounding temperature and wondered if it had dropped. Suddenly, the area began to shake, startling Uso from his sleep. Lin called out to 𝐸𝐬 and discovered that the medium-sized fire dragon nest had lost a significant amount of power and was on the verge of collapsing. He was asked to spend 20,000 gold to repair its fire attribute magic. Despite repairing it, 𝐸𝐬's health continued to decline due to the strain of the awakening process. Lin repaired the nest again, using up more of his remaining gold, leaving him with 40,160 gold. The nest threatened to collapse once more, requiring another 20,000 gold for repairs. Lin grew concerned about how long this would continue, and how much more magic power it would take to fully awaken 𝐸𝐬's ancient dragon bloodline. He was informed that the gold was being consumed too quickly, and that he only had one more chance to repair the nest. Just then, Uso approached Lin and asked if 𝐸𝐬 was inside the volcano nest. Lin explained to Uso that 𝐸𝐬 was in the process of awakening his ancient bloodline, which required a significant amount of magic power. With only one chance left to replenish it, Lin used it. However, Uso observed that the magic power wasn't sufficient. Lin asked Uso what he planned to do next. Uso suddenly levitated, revealing that after a long period of dormancy, the magic power accumulated within him was enough to level up to Tier 3. Lin understood that Uso had leveled up, but he couldn't feel happy with everything that was happening. The warning for the nest to collapse soon flashed again, and 𝐸𝐬's health continued to decline rapidly, prompting Lin to act quickly to save him. 𝐸𝐬's health dropped to 11, leaving Lin desperate and unsure of what to do. As 𝐸𝐬's health reached 10, Uso unleashed a super strong dragon breath on 𝐸𝐬's nest. 𝐸𝐬 roared in response, and Lin felt the intense heat. Afterward, Uso reverted to his kid form and was held by 𝐸𝐬, who thanked Uso. 𝐸𝐬 had now ascended to Tier 4, possessing skills such as Bite, Smash, Dragon Breath, Dragon's Might, Intermediate Fire Magic Immunity, and Physical Immunity. His magics Sagery's powers included Flaming Bomb, Intermediate Shield, and Intermediate Self-Healing. 𝐸𝐬's experience points were at 968, white out of 1,000, and his healing points were at 88 out of 100. Lin wonders what had just happened. 𝐸𝐬 explains that Uso used the life energy emitted during his leveling up and transferred it to 𝐸𝐬 through his dragon breath. Thanks to Uso, 𝐸𝐬 was able to awaken his bloodline. However, Uso mentions that he will now need to consume 3 times more magic power than usual to level up in the future. Uso doesn't mind this change, as long as he can continue playing with 𝐸𝐬 every day. Lin praises Uso for his actions. Reflecting on 𝐸𝐬's thrilling awakening incident, Lin notes that 𝐸𝐬 has been guarding Uso diligently ever since, grateful for Uso's help during his awakening difficulties. To prevent any accidents after the ancient bloodline awakening, Lin had taken precautionary measures. 𝐸𝐬 purchased a fire attribute magic potion costing 500,000 gold, borrowed from 𝐸𝐬. Lin also mentions that they successfully produced the Dragon Blood potion using 𝐸𝐬's awakened ancient bloodline, despite the challenging experience of consuming the potion. Lin and 𝐸𝐬 experienced the potent effects of the Dragon Blood potion, propelling them through their training missions until they reached the final one. Lin was congratulated for successfully clearing the training, and access to the Dragon God Arena was imminent. Upon arrival, they were warmly welcomed. The arena was currently selecting an opponent for 𝐸𝐬's upcoming battle, with Lin instructed not to leave the spectator platform under any circumstances. Lin marveled at the grandeur of the arena and asked if the battle would commence immediately upon their arrival. An opponent was selected, the ancient steel dragon, matching 𝐸𝐬's tier. 𝐸𝐬 was asked to prepare for the battle ahead. Seeing the opponent, 𝐸𝐬 confidently stated that he was born prepared. Lin and 𝐸𝐬 learned the rules. If one dragon couldn't fight back or accept defeat, the other would be declared the winner. Victory for 𝐸𝐬 promised high experience rewards and a further 10% awakening of his ancient dragon bloodline. Lin would also inherit all skills used by the opponent during the battle. Excited by the prospect of further awakening his ancient bloodline, 𝐸𝐬 eagerly awaited the battle. Lin was pleased to learn that steel attribute magic and compound magic could only be cast by a Tier 7 magician. Observing the strict penalties for failure, 𝐸𝐬 potentially losing a significant amount of experience points or having 10% of his awakened ancient bloodline deducted, and Lin forfeiting the opportunity to inherit any steel dragon magic skills, He remarked on the severity of the rules. They had only one chance to either defeat or lose to each ancient dragon. Lin asked 𝐸𝐬 what he thought about starting the battle, given their single opportunity. 𝐸𝐬 replied with determination, expressing excitement at the prospect of battling his own kind and requesting Lin's permission to fight. Lin reflected that despite 𝐸𝐬's awakened ancient bloodline, he still retained a childlike demeanor. Nevertheless, Lin believed that 𝐸𝐬's fire attribute should be effective against the steel attribute. With Lin's approval, the battle commenced. 𝐸𝐬 charged at the steel dragon, declaring his dominance. The steel dragon retaliated, and 𝐸𝐬 managed to dodge the first attack, boasting about his evasion skills. However, the steel dragon's second attack struck 𝐸𝐬, causing him to be thrown and collapse to the side. Lin noticed 𝐸𝐬's health had decreased by 10. 𝐸𝐬 found himself unable to move and wondered if this was paralysis. The steel dragon struck him several more times, further reducing 𝐸𝐬's health by another 30 points. Lin was shocked, and believed they couldn't continue fighting like this. 𝐸𝐬's combat skills clearly weren't a match for the ancient steel dragon, not to mention the dragon's ability to induce paralysis. Lin instructed 𝐸𝐬 to create distance and use long-range offensive magic. 𝐸𝐬 responded by launching a flaming bomb attack at the steel dragon. Taking advantage of the moment, 𝐸𝐬 grabbed the dragon's tail, confident that the dragon couldn't evade attacks at such close range. He prepared to unleash another flaming bomb, but the steel dragon retaliated, dealing another 30 points of damage, leaving 𝐸𝐬 with only 30 health remaining. Lin observed that the dragon used its tail and wings effectively, leveraging its body weight to its advantage in battle. The steel dragon then attacked with its dragon scale thorn. Lin calculated that 𝐸𝐬 lost 10 healing points every time he was hit, and worried that if the dragon unleashed more thorns, 𝐸𝐬 would be in serious trouble. Lin urged 𝐸𝐬 not to overexert himself and reassured him that it was okay to accept defeat. However, 𝐸𝐬 was unwavering in his confidence, declaring that he would never admit defeat. He unleashed the dragon-blazing sun breath attack to obliterate the thorns and strike the steel dragon. Lin remarked on the intensity of the flames and asked why 𝐸𝐬 hadn't used such a powerful skill earlier, speculating whether 𝐸𝐬 had learned it after awakening his ancient bloodline. 𝐸𝐬 explained that it was a last resort move, a killer maneuver he had saved for the critical moment. Observing that the steel dragon was visibly weakening, Lin encouraged 𝐸𝐬 to press the attack, confident they could still win the battle. But as 𝐸𝐬 moved to strike, he collapsed. Lin realized the battle had reached its conclusion, neither of them able to continue. Lin resolved to challenge the ancient dragon again next week. Lin and 𝐸𝐬 returned to their nest, where 𝐸𝐬, sitting in silence, expressed shame over his performance. He admitted he hadn't been defeated by the steel dragon, but rather his own powers had backfired. Lin understood why 𝐸𝐬 hadn't used those skills earlier, realizing they weren't fully mastered. Lin comforted 𝐸𝐬, reminding him that awakening his ancient bloodline was a recent development, and mastering its powers would take time. Lin assured 𝐸𝐬 they would reclaim victory in the next battle. 𝐸𝐬 insisted he could have won that round and regretted not using his Devson breath sooner. Lin gently questioned whether 𝐸𝐬 had become afraid of losing, teasingly suggesting he had turned into a hurdy dragon. 𝐸𝐬 bristled at the suggestion, showing his anger. Lin believed provoking 𝐸𝐬 was the best way to motivate him. Lin encouraged 𝐸𝐬 to reflect on how the ancient steel dragon had attacked him, suggesting 𝐸𝐬 could learn to use his wings, tail, and body to his advantage in future battles. Lin reassured 𝐸𝐬 that just as the steel dragon would grow stronger, so would he. Uso added that 𝐸𝐬 would indeed do that, expressing confidence that 𝐸𝐬 would become much stronger than the steel dragon. 𝐸𝐬 felt greatly motivated, affirming that he would surely triumph in the next battle with the steel dragon. Lin agreed, saying they would give it their best together. The scene then shifted to Prince List's secret chamber, where he angrily broke a teacup and demanded to know what the Dark Court was up to. He instructed enrollment to investigate Lin's activities and questioned why it was taking so long to find him. List expressed frustration, asking if they no longer wished to cooperate. enrollment urged List to calm down and presented a secret letter sent earlier by the Dark Court. enrollment humbly requested that List review its contents. Taking the letter, List remarked that he was curious to see what kind of explanation they would offer this time. As he read, he wondered if Glenstone might be returning secretly and ahead of schedule. enrollment asked if Glenstone was the principal of Iris Academy. List confirmed this and speculated that Glenstone might be returning to investigate the Trial Tower incident. He explained that this situation had forced the Dark Court into hiding, and they had only been able to send the letter because Glenstone had temporarily lost track of their whereabouts. List commented that the Dark Court was certainly something else. enrollment asked what was troubling him. List explained that they wanted the Dark Court to deliver Lin to them, seeking their assistance in dealing with him. He revealed that a dormant dragon was hidden inside the Nightmare Beast, which the Dark Court had released into the Trial Tower. List recalled that Lin had taken this dragon with him after defeating the Nightmare Beast. enrollment was astonished, noting that this wasn't just a drake, but a true dragon, as recorded in historical texts. He questioned whether the Dark Court possessed real dragons. List confirmed that he had asked them before, but they had remained silent. Now, in their predicament, they were finally willing to share information. List explained that the sleeping dragon possessed the ability to shapeshift. He recounted how, during his investigation of the Wrath of Ice and Fire potion after the intruder incident in the experimental lab, he had gone in search of Lin. List suspected that Lin was hiding something from him, but Dia was present to support List's testimony. From Lin's demeanor, List deduced that Lin had likely used the sleeping dragon's shapeshifting ability to disguise himself as a student and preemptively inform Dia of developments. 𝐸𝐚𝐽 asked if List was suggesting that Lin and Bai were collaborating to deceive him. List replied that Dia was heavily influenced by Lin and viewed dragons as benevolent creatures, which List found laughable. It was natural for Dia to want to protect dragons. Regarding Lin, List expressed surprise that Lin wasn't afraid of the sleeping dragon. List speculated that Lin would have likely killed it on sight, raising questions about why Lin had lied to him. 𝐸𝐚𝐽 suggested that Lin might have been the intruder who broke into the experimental lab. If true, 𝐸𝐚𝐽 reasoned, Lin would have knowledge of their lab, possibly aided by the Mason Chamber of Commerce. 𝐸𝐚𝐽 questioned whether the chamber had joined forces with Lin, betraying 𝐸𝐚𝐽 and List. List admitted he had underestimated Lin, considering the possibility that not only the chamber but Dia as well might be aligning with Lin's ambitions. List wondered if Lin's goal was to bring him down, making Lin the Academy's new prodigy even more famous. Despite this, List resolved to help Lin achieve his aims. He instructed Baxton to contact Iris Academy, suggesting it was time to give Lin the opportunity to challenge List's authority. The scene then shifted to the Academy, where Lin entered a room and asked Yisha's teacher if she was looking for him. Yisha told that Lin and Augustine were the most outstanding students of their generation. The Academy planned to organize a special final exam in the realm of trials for other students to observe and learn from. They hoped this initiative would inspire other students to strive for improvement in their own training. However, the Academy never required both of them to do this for nothing. In addition to a generous amount of study credits, the winner would also receive a special reward from Listband. Augustine had already agreed to the duel, and she asked if Lin intended to take part. Lin thought he would love the chance to duel Augustine, but if Listband was involved, there might be a trap. He was tasked with defeating Augustine without using dragon magic. If successful, he would be rewarded with 3 fragments of the water dragon and 50 magic experience points. Lin considered that since he already had 7 fragments, these must be the final 3, so he had to accept, regardless. He knew he would have to figure it out as he went along. He accepted that and thought there was still 1 more week to prepare until the end of the semester. As such, he devoted all his energy and time to his magic training, preparing not only for his upcoming duel against Augustine, but also for any potential future dangers. He wasn't the only one with that thought. Lin and Augustine trained together, both focusing intensely on their preparations. Augustine mentioned that she had been training vigorously, and Lin replied that he had been doing the same. They both agreed that their current level of training wouldn't suffice, deciding to increase their training by another 4 hours that day. The scene shifted after a week, when the semester concluded with Lin's duel against Augustine. As the battle commenced, Lin unleashed the chain fireball, while Augustine countered with a lightning storm. In response, Lin employed the chain fireball serpent, and Augustine used the wind hardness spell. The director watched the duel closely, and remarked that regardless of their control over magic or casting speed, they were on par with magicians of the same level. However, he wondered if Lin truly was a Tier 4 magician.